Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the SWUS College Football Week 8. We're on to Saturday. Got a lot of good games. You guys know the drill. Same as every other week. Going to get through as many games as I can. Hopefully by the time you're watching this, I got the under in Miami, Louisville. It's going to be close. At the time of recording, the fourth quarter just started. There's 30 points on the board. I have under 52.5, but Louisville's driving, so we'll see. Hopefully I get that. I got Minnesota plus 6.5, which I'm worried about. They're actually winning at halftime right now, but Nebraska took a couple deep shots, and I think they're going to connect on one of those big plays and open the game up. So I'm a little worried about that. I also have Cal at a terrible number later, so we'll see how the night plays out. Saturday, week 8. Let's do it. I mean, is Cooper Rush worth 2.5 points? I would hope Quinn Ewers put up a decent stat line against Arizona State. If he didn't, we have a real problem.
You can say the same thing about Creighton. Okay, they had the one good game against Kansas at home.
When Toast talks about the kicking market, it's like some earth is flat shit. Andy, true or false, this is going to be a dog walking.
Dog walking. This is my dog walking of the day. I think it's going to be very ugly. Dog walking. I think this is going to be ugly.
Hey, get this to us. Georgia Tech, Duke. This one was bouncing all over the place. It was at 3, then 2.5, 1.5. Then the limits raised up to 20K, and it looks like Duke got hit again. We're now up to 2.5, 30K limits. Georgia Tech, Duke. So Georgia Tech, perfect 6-0 so far this year. I will say, we've seen this team go on the road twice, though. Both times it was pretty sweaty. Remember, they opened up the season on the road at Boulder. Final score was 27-20, but that was actually a tie game with a minute left. If you remember, Georgia Tech was running the clock out to kick a game-winning field goal, and they broke a touchdown to give the Georgia Tech minus 4.5 bettors a cover. That was a very close game against Colorado. And then their second road game was on the road at Wake. That game went to overtime. They almost lost to Wake Forest. So although Georgia Tech is 6-0, both times we've seen this team go on the road, it certainly wasn't dominant at all. And on top of that, this is going to be by far their toughest road matchup. Not only is Duke the strongest team they've seen on the road so far this year, but this is also not a great matchup for Georgia Tech. We know Georgia Tech's an offense that wants to run the ball. They've got efficient passing numbers as well, but this is an offense that wants to run the ball. Duke's got one of the strongest run defenses in the conference. They're 20th in success rate per rush, 58th in PPA per rush so far this year. The problem with the Duke defense has been the secondary. They can't seem to cover anybody, but in terms of up front, Duke's got two of the best defensive tackles in the ACC. So running the ball on the road against this Duke defense is not going to be easy. And it's not like this Georgia Tech run game has been unstoppable this year. I mean, we've actually seen 2 games where Georgia Tech struggled to get the run game going. It was against Clemson and against Wake. They averaged 3.69 yards per carry as a team, 155 rushing yards per game in those 2. I mean, we've also seen them steamroll a few teams as well. 7.67 yards per carry in their other 3 FBS games. We don't want to sweep those under the rug. I'm just saying this Georgia Tech run game hasn't been unstoppable. We have seen teams slow it down. And like I said, this Duke defense has been basically lights out against the run so far this year. That being said, when we're looking at the Duke game logs, we do have to point out they haven't really played a single team that can run it outside of Tulane. I mean, they've played mostly passing offenses. And by the way, Tulane lit them up. Now, they pretty much lit them up through the air. They didn't do it on the ground. But when we're talking about Duke's run defense, it's been great. They haven't seen a ton of rushing attacks. Georgia Tech's going to be by far the toughest rushing attack they've seen. Duke is also missing a couple linebackers. Remember, Nick Morris Jr., he got injured back in week 4. He's out for the season. Now another starting linebacker, Trey Freeman, might be out. He just got injured 2 snaps into the Cal game. He's listed as questionable. They've also got another linebacker, Kendall Johnson, that's missed the last 2 games and is questionable. So Duke's having some injury concerns at the linebacker position. Georgia Tech is the toughest rushing attack they've seen to date. Look, Duke's defensive line is so good that I still trust them to slow down this Georgia Tech offense, even with the injuries at linebacker. The problem is, like I said before, this Duke secondary just can't seem to cover anybody. I mean, look at these games right here. Illinois, Tulane, NC State, Cal. In those games, they're allowing over 293 passing yards per game, over 9.3 yards per pass attempt. Remember, Duke's been playing this entire season without their safety, Terry Moore, who's one of the better players on that defense, and he won't be back for this game. So this Duke secondary is a problem. And even though Georgia Tech is a run-first offense, Haynes King is capable of throwing it. I mean, look at the last 3 games. He's got a 108.4 QB rating, over 205 passing yards per game. Again, This is a rushing offense, but Haynes King can definitely throw it. It's not like he's incapable of throwing the ball. What worries me a little bit about Haynes King is his worst 2 games of the season happen to be his 2 road starts. In those 2 games where Georgia Tech struggled, 79.5 QB rating in those 2 against Colorado and Wake. And if he doesn't have run support on the road, not really sure if Haynes King can keep up with this Duke offense, because we know Duke's offense is going to score. I will say, though, Haynes King has done a great job handling pressure, and Duke's defensive line, like I keep repeating, is great. They've done a great job generating pressure so far this year. So let's give Haynes King some credit in that department. Also, something Haynes King has done a great job of this year, protecting the football. He has 0 turnover-worthy plays this year. 0. He's one of only 2 quarterbacks in the country, 2 starting quarterbacks, that has 0 turnover-worthy plays. So, yeah, he's done a great job protecting the football. He's handled pressure well. Maybe not a ton of downfield plays under pressure, but he's protected the ball. He's checked it down. So you like that if you're betting Georgia Tech. The question is, can Georgia Tech keep up with Duke's offense? Because out of nowhere, Duke is looking like the most explosive offense in the country. Georgia Tech's also dealing with some injuries on the defensive side of the ball. Their main corner, Amari Harvey, he got carted off the field in the Virginia Tech game. He's going to miss this one. That's their main corner. And their defensive tackle, Akilo Stone, he might miss his 2nd straight game. So Georgia Tech missing a couple starters on the defensive side. And like I said, this Duke offense has just caught fire. In their last 3 games, they're averaging 42.7 points per game, over 7 yards per play, success rate up close to 49%. Darian Mensah is playing as well as any other quarterback in the country right now. In his last 3 games, they played Boston College, Syracuse, and Cal, 127.8 QB rating. He looks excellent. This Duke offense looks unstoppable. Like I just said, they're averaging like 43 points per game. Now, the good news for Georgia Tech is the strength of this defense has been defending the pass. Obviously, when we're looking at these numbers, these are Georgia Tech's numbers against the pass in their FBS matchups. Amari Harvey was on the field. Their main corner was on the field for all these games. But what the point I'm getting at is the weakness of this Georgia Tech defense is defending the run. Duke doesn't really run the ball. So, all right, maybe Georgia Tech's defense can match up a little bit, but I'm not sure, because you can make the argument that they have not seen an offense this strong all season. I know they played Clemson, but number one, Clemson was really injured on the offensive side for that game. They were missing 2 offensive linemen. They were missing Antonio Williams at wide receiver. And by the way, Clemson was still moving the ball on Georgia Tech. 6.25 yards per play, success rate up close to 48%. They were held to 21 points. I believe they fumbled twice or something. They kept stalling out drives, but they were moving the ball on Georgia Tech. So I think Duke's going to move the ball on Georgia Tech, if you ask me. And can Georgia Tech keep up? Not sure if they're able to run. I'm sure Haynes can complete some throws. Look, I personally think Duke is the better team right now. I mean, I know Duke had those turnovers in the Illinois game. I know there were some slip-ups early in the season. But keep in mind, Georgia Tech could have 2 losses right now, one of them to Wake Forest. And if you look at the last few games, Duke is steamrolling. 45 points against NC State, 38 points on the road at Syracuse, 45 points on the West Coast against Cal. This team is just a freight train right now, and I don't want to step in front of it. I was actually considering taking Georgia Tech when it hit 3 earlier in the week, but the more I looked at it, the more I started leaning towards Duke. And if it's under a field goal, it's got to be Duke for me. I think they're the stronger team right now. Eastern Michigan, Miami of Ohio. This is a tough one because the recent data points for Eastern Michigan, they're very confusing. They're a little bit conflicting as far as trying to get a feel for who this Eastern Michigan team is. So if you followed Eastern Michigan so far this year, you know that the offense is pretty good and the defense is terrible, right? That's kind of how the first 4 or 5 games went for Eastern Michigan. The offense you could trust. They can't stop anybody. Well, in the last 3 games, the offense has struggled, starting with the Central Michigan game. In the last 3, they're averaging 19.7 points per game, 4.7 yards per play. These numbers way worse than the games they were playing earlier in the season. They're definitely missing their wide receiver one, Terry Lockett Jr. He's missed the last 2 games and still leads the team in receiving. He's listed as questionable, so maybe they get him back. But the Eastern Michigan offense has just fallen off. So you're probably thinking, oh, they must look terrible then because their defense is bad. Well, here's where it gets weird. Despite their offense falling off, the defense out of nowhere is starting to play well. And this defense was laughable early in the season. But in their last 2 games, 31.8% success rate. One of those games was on the road against Buffalo. Now, Northern Illinois and Buffalo, not exactly MAC offenses that scare me. So they've played a couple of bad offenses, but this defense out of nowhere is playing pretty well. And what makes it even weirder, their 2 best defensive players, linebacker Zach Mauchin and safety Jermarion McNulty, they barely even played in the last game. Mauchin came back from injury. He played 10 snaps. McNulty didn't even play. Those are the 2 captains of the team. So I don't know what happened. This Eastern Michigan defense is still injured. Out of nowhere, they're playing some defense, and Eastern Michigan's been competitive despite the offense falling off a little bit. And it puts us in a weird situation because we're coming into this game against Miami of Ohio. They're going on the road, and part of me is like, you can't count on the Eastern Michigan defense. But at the same time, I don't really trust the Miami of Ohio offense either. They really haven't looked right since Daquan Finn came back from injury. Remember, he got banged up. He's been back for 2 games now, and in the last 2 games, 22.5 points per game, success rate at 40.1%. They were struggling to move the ball against Akron. And remember, they're dealing with some injuries, specifically at the running back position. Their RB1 is Kenny Tracy. He's been out the last couple games. And one of their backup running backs is Josh Ringer. He's been out as well. They're really missing those guys in the last 2 games, and they're most likely still going to be missing them here against Eastern Michigan. I also think they're going to be missing their right guard, Austin Uke. He just missed last game. I think he's going to miss this one as well. So some injuries on the Miami of Ohio offense, and it showed. I mean, this offense, Akron is not a good defense. You should not be struggling to move the ball against Akron. Now, the Red Hawks defense, however, has looked great in those last 2 games. I mean, 2 of their strongest defensive games of the year, which is why they picked up 2 wins, 2 double-digit wins, but despite their offense looking terrible. Here's the thing. Those games were against Northern Illinois and Akron. Eastern Michigan's offense should be much better than those 2 teams. It should, but remember, the offense out of nowhere has started stuttering. So it really puts us in a tough spot. Personally, if Eastern Michigan's defense is stepping up, this number should not be 13.5. So I would lean towards Eastern Michigan, and I don't know if we can count on Eastern Michigan's defense to keep playing like this. And at the same time, I don't know if we can count on Eastern Michigan's offense to keep playing that poorly. So does Eastern Michigan revert back to the team we saw earlier in the season? Or are we going to see this new competitive defensive Eastern Michigan that they've shown us the last couple of games? Either way, I don't think Miami of Ohio is that good offensively. They're a strong defensive team. I don't think they're good enough offensively to be laying close to 2 touchdowns here. Eastern Michigan looks competitive the last couple of games. Give me the Eagles. Eastern Michigan, Chris Creighton, plus the points. UConn, Boston College in a nice little regional rivalry here. So this UConn offense, really disappointing game on the road in Buffalo, and they played Buffalo. Buffalo had a backup quarterback in this one. Taquan Roberson didn't play in this game, and the line was 3.5, so it was pretty much right around where the market had it. I really thought UConn was going to beat them up pretty bad. Thought it was a disappointing game for the offense. UConn's an offense that I trust, and I think is pretty strong. Pretty disappointing game for UConn's offense. They bounced back in a major way, though. They beat FIU 51-10. in the following week. So UConn's offense comes back in a major way. Now they're matched up against a Boston College defense that's pretty tough. Definitely a tough matchup. This is an ACC program for UConn. It's a tough matchup for UConn. They're matched up against a Boston College team that needs a win desperately. They've lost 4 games in a row. They failed to cover the number 4 games in a row. So Boston College needs this one bad. So you would look at this graphic. We're talking about the UConn offense against the Boston College defense. You would think, UConn's just going to march up and down the field on Boston College. And they might, but this graphic, obviously you have to take into consideration who they've played. I mean, Boston College is playing games against Clemson, Pitt, Cal, Michigan State. Meanwhile, UConn's playing a MAC schedule. So maybe we don't take this graphic too seriously. This is not apples to apples at all. That being said, Boston College defense is so injured right now. Check this out. So this is as of last night. Boston College had 4 linebackers listed as questionable, 4 defensive backs listed as questionable, 2 of them out. I believe they have 2 corners out for the year, or 1 corner out for the year, one of their main corners. 3 defensive linemen listed as questionable. And by the way, the injuries on the defense are showing because they looked like a pretty strong defense earlier in the year. In their last 3 games, we're really seeing this team struggle in coverage. In their last 3 games against Cal, Pitt, Clemson, 49% success rate per dropback, over 287 passing yards allowed per game. Maybe if they get a couple corners back, Amari Jackson, Townsend, those are two of their corners that have been out. I'm reading they have a chance of coming back, so maybe they can turn things around. But, I mean, this UConn offense is good. I don't trust UConn on the other side of the ball. They have a quarterback that can throw it. They have a quarterback that's handled blitzes really well that's going to come in handy against Boston College, who blitzes a lot. They have a quarterback that's taken advantage of when he's gotten clean pockets. Fagnano can play. This UConn offense is good, so even though this is a desperate Boston College team, even though this is an ACC team at home against UConn, I think UConn can move the ball in this game. The problem is going to be on the other side of the ball because this UConn defense may have been elite last year. I think they lost 9 starters from last year's team, and it showed. This is not the same defense at all. UConn has really struggled to defend the run this year, just 120th in success rate per rush. Now, Boston College is not much of a rushing offense, but they can run it, and they will be able to run it here at home against UConn. Lonergan can also complete some passes, even though his production's kind of fallen off recently. I'm sure Boston College is able to score points right back. Both teams throw the ball. Both teams move at a pretty quick pace. I do think UConn could steal this one, but the move to make in this one was to take an over early. I think a bunch of people in the group took the over. But yeah, when the markets were opening on Sunday, I know there was a bunch of people in the group chat that were taking the over. They got it at a much better number, though. Oh, no, you can still get 57.5. I think they got 55.5. So you could still get the over 57.5. I didn't personally bet it, but I think these teams get into the 30s. So my pick for this game would be over. LSU Vanderbilt, this one went from 1 up to 2.5, kind of bouncing back and forth between 2 and 2.5 here. At the time of recording, we're looking at a flat 2. LSU Vanderbilt, we're into the SEC here. So will Vandy rebound after the tough loss on the road in Tuscaloosa, where they played pretty well? They were competitive with Alabama. They've got a home game against LSU. You would think the way LSU's been talked about and the way they looked, you wouldn't think that they were 5-1, but here we are. Both these teams are 5-1 heading into this game. And the thing with LSU's offense, and I know everyone has sold their stock on LSU's offense, and I can't say I blame them for doing so. I will say they're coming off by far their best offensive game of the season, or maybe not by far. They're coming off their best offensive game of the season. And you might look at the final score here, 20-10. This is very misleading. I know the story of this LSU offense is they can't finish drives, and that was kind of the case against South Carolina, but they were moving the ball far more efficiently against South Carolina than they had been earlier in the season. The final score of this game was 20-10. South Carolina's touchdown came on a 72-yard touchdown run, which came just 2 plays after LSU fumbled the ball into the end zone on the 1. So, look, LSU had 1st and goal 3 times in this game and came away with 3 combined points. The point I'm making is you look at this game, 20-10. The final score of this game could have easily been 34-3. Like, they really beat out South Carolina handedly. It was kind of crazy that the game was even close. They averaged over 6.9 yards per play offensively in that game. And it's not like South Carolina's defense is bad. South Carolina's offense is not good at all, but South Carolina's defense is pretty solid. So I actually thought it was a decent offensive game from LSU. They also might be healthier on this side of the ball. I'm not sure about their main wide receiver, Aaron Anderson. He got injured in the Ole Miss game. He didn't play against South Carolina. I'm reading there's a chance he comes back, but it's not confirmed. It looks like they are getting their starting left guard back, though. Paul Mabenga, he missed the South Carolina game. So it looks like they're slightly healthier on the offensive line. And in terms of Garrett Nussmeier, I mean, he was dealing with something all through camp. He's been nicked up a little bit here and there throughout the year. Brian Kelly said, and look, I don't know if this means anything, but Brian Kelly said, and I quote, "This is the healthiest Nussmeier's been all season." He said that. So maybe that's just some BS. I'm not sure. The point I'm making is I actually thought it was a pretty decent offensive game from LSU last week and slightly stronger than what we've seen in the past. And the thing with Vanderbilt is, okay, here's how I feel about Vanderbilt. I know everyone loves this team. I've bet on them a couple times myself. I had them plus 13.5 against Alabama. Here's the thing with Vanderbilt. Their body of work is becoming less impressive as the year cruises along. So we're talking about Vanderbilt's defense. They've got excellent defensive numbers so far this year. You take a look at who they played. They played one good offense all year. It was Alabama. And by the way, Alabama averaged over 7 yards per play against Vanderbilt, 49.3% success rate. So Vanderbilt's defense did not play well. I know the touchdown at the end was like padding and they shouldn't have given up 30 points. I get that. but Alabama was moving the ball efficiently. They were running the ball. That Alabama's offense did not have problems moving the football on Vanderbilt's defense. If you look at the previous 4 games where Vanderbilt's defense was playing well, who's the best offense here? South Carolina? They can't do anything against they should have scored 3 points against LSU last week. Georgia State's terrible. Virginia Tech is embarrassing. Utah State is a pretty good offense, pretty good Mountain West offense. Remember, Utah State scored like 35 points on Vanderbilt. They covered. So Utah State was moving the ball on Vanderbilt. I don't think this Vanderbilt defense is all that great. And look, there's also some concerns as far as injuries to the secondary here for Vanderbilt. But from what I'm reading, they have 3 corners listed as questionable, 3 of their top 5 corners or something. But from what I'm reading, only Marlon Jones is probably going to be the only one that sits. I think the other 2 that are questionable are going to play. So maybe not as injured as it originally looked. But yeah, I don't think this Vanderbilt defense is that elite. And I think Alabama showed us that. I think LSU can move the ball in this game. And on the other side of the ball, this is where this is going to be quite the battle. If you've followed college football so far this year, you know that Vanderbilt's been one of, if not the most efficient offense in the country. And they deserve more credit for that. I'm a little hesitant to back the Vanderbilt defense, but the Vanderbilt offense has made me a believer. They look great. But LSU's defense, this is truly one of the best defenses in the country. They may be dealing with some injuries on the defensive line, which is a concern. Their edge rusher, Jamari Butler, defensive tackle Bernard Gooden, they both got banged up in the South Carolina game, and actually, I wrote down they both have a good chance of playing. So maybe they both play, and that's a nothing, but something to keep your eye on. The thing with LSU's defense is we really haven't seen this unit play a bad football game yet. What was LSU's worst defensive game of the year? Week 5 on the road at Ole Miss. 5.98 yards per play, success rate under 40%. It's not that bad. This is the worst defensive game of the year. Meanwhile, we're talking about the Vanderbilt offense, which is very good. I'm not trying to poke holes in it. I will say, again, kind of like the defense, if you take a look at their body of work, look at the numbers here when Vanderbilt actually played a respectable defense. South Carolina and Alabama. 22.5 points per game, 5.66 yards per play, 47.4% success rate. These are still decent, but if you look at who they padded against, Virginia Tech, at the time, I thought that was so impressive. Oh, my God. They went into Blacksburg and lit Virginia Tech's defense up. Man, I watched Old Dominion do the same thing, put up basically the same score in that same building. It becomes less impressive when we see how truly awful Virginia Tech is. Georgia State is one of the worst teams in the country. Well, that's a little unfair. They're one of the worst teams in the Sun Belt. How about that? And then Utah State, solid offense. They're terrible defensively. So Vanderbilt might be guilty of putting up some really monstrous numbers against some really bad defenses. Meanwhile, when they saw good defenses, they're still a good offense, but they looked a lot more pedestrian. And this LSU defense, it's one of the best in the country, certainly a top 15, top 10 defense. So I would imagine the Vanderbilt offensive numbers look closer to the left part of this graphic than the right part of this graphic. And as far as the market's opinion on Vanderbilt, I truly believe we've come way too far. Remember, just a few weeks ago, Vanderbilt was catching more than a field goal against South Carolina. Catching more than a field goal to South Carolina, who LSU was just laying, 9-2? They were just catching points from that team. Just a few weeks later, we're laying points to LSU. What happened in the Alabama game to make us upgrade Vanderbilt? Meanwhile, LSU dominated South Carolina. I think the market has swung too far with Vanderbilt as well. It looks like people have got them 10, 12, 13 points higher than they were at the beginning of the season. And I think the market swung too far on this one. I think LSU wins outright. I'm on LSU. I got the plus 2.5. Washington, Michigan. This one actually got up to 6.5, and it looks like Washington got it hit at that point. The number kept coming down. We finally did see some buyback on the Michigan side. That might have been weather related, though. Supposed to be some weather issues in this one, so maybe the bad weather favors Michigan. Maybe we're seeing some buyback on Michigan because of that. At the time of recording, we're looking at a flat 5. Washington, Michigan, cool Big Ten game here. So this Washington team showing some grit, we'll call it. Back-to-back games where they were in an early hole, and they managed to come out of both of them with wins. In fact, in the Rutgers game, they ended up covering a big number. So this Washington team hasn't exactly been put in the best situations. Remember, Maryland was coming off a bye week. They were flying across the country. They went down 20-0. Takes a certain kind of team to come back and win that game on the road, 3,000 miles away from home. Then Rutgers, they went down early too. Ended up winning 38-19. So shout out to Washington. Unfortunately, things are not getting much easier for Washington because now they're heading back out on the road to the Big House against this Michigan defense. Certainly not an easy place to go play. I will say, Damon Williams and this Washington offense, they've definitely showed me something. They definitely showed me they can score points in adversity. Now, I do have some concerns for Washington's offense, though, specifically the offensive line. Their left guard and left tackle both missed the Rutgers game. John Mills is the left guard. Carver Willis is the left tackle. They were missing the entire left side of their offensive line in that Rutgers game. They're both listed as questionable, so I'm not sure if either of those pieces are going to be back. Now, you didn't really notice it much against Rutgers because Rutgers' injured-ass defensive front, they're not the unit that could exploit an injured offensive line. I can assure you Michigan's defensive front in the Big House can definitely exploit an injured offensive line. Keep in mind, this is a Michigan defense that's also healthier. They just recently got their cornerback, Zeke Berry, and the guy that was starting in place of Zeke Berry looks awesome. He's a freshman. I forget his name, but he looks awesome. So they actually got healthier and deeper here, this Michigan defense. So really would like to know the status of those two offensive linemen for Washington. So do we think they're able to move the ball on this Michigan defense? And this is tough. There's two different ways to interpret the data here for this Michigan defense. On one hand, you could say, hey, this Michigan defense plays elite at home. And you'd be correct in saying that. In their 3 home games, they're allowing 10 points per game, 3.57 yards per play, success rate at 33%. They have played elite defense at home. They've actually looked pretty shaky on the road. In their 3 road games, they're allowing over 27 points per game, success rate over 50%. They're struggling to get off the field on the road. So you can say that. You could say, hey, this Michigan defense is great at home. But you could also say, look at the opponents. I mean, their 3 home opponents, New Mexico, Central Michigan, Wisconsin. The toughest offense they've seen at home so far this year is New Mexico, and that was in the opener. Remember, that's a brand new coaching staff, brand new roster. That was their first game ever on the road in the Big House. That was probably Michigan's toughest defensive test at home so far this year. So you could say, hey, Michigan's defense plays great at home. You could also say, hey, Michigan's defense has looked kind of shaky every single time they saw a decent opponent. And you would also be accurate in saying that. Look at Michigan's numbers against the pass the 3 times they saw good quarterbacks. Oklahoma with Mateer, Nebraska with Raiola, and USC with Maeva. In those 3 games, they got thrown on. 7.9 yards per pass attempt, 52.6% success rate per dropback. They were generating pressure. It didn't matter. They were struggling in coverage. So, I have some concerns about this Michigan pass defense that you could say every single time they saw a good quarterback, they got thrown on. Granted, all 3 of those games were on the road, which is kind of an interesting twist. But this is Washington, and Damon Williams, he's definitely a good quarterback. In fact, if you take a closer look at that Ohio State game, if you watch that Ohio State game, you look at the final score, you might think, Washington's offense was stifled. They didn't do much. And that's true. They didn't score a lot of points, but I thought Damon Williams handled himself pretty well in that game, and Washington kind of shot themselves in the foot a few times. If you look at Damon Williams' numbers against the blitz, numbers against pressure, it's excellent. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the country so far this year against the blitz. Michigan blitzes all the time. They've got an elite pass rush. There are few quarterbacks that have handled pressure as well as Damon Williams so far this year. I'm not saying he's going to go into the Big House and piece up Michigan's defense. I'm just saying this might be a guy that's built to handle a pass rush like this. So if you ask me, Kyle, do you think Washington's going to move the ball in Michigan's defense? I kind of think they will move it here and there. Obviously, they're not going to put up 40 points, but I kind of think Washington will be able to move the chains. I think Damon Williams is going to make some plays. I think the other side of the ball is the more interesting matchup here. Michigan's offense against Washington's defense. In my opinion, we don't really know how good either of these 2 units are yet. You look on paper, Washington's done a great job against the run. Surprisingly good numbers against the run. 24th in success rate per rush, 29th in PPA per rush. That could come in handy because we know this Michigan offense wants to run the ball. So the question becomes, do we think this Washington defense is capable of slowing down Michigan on the ground? And that's a tough question. Remember, Michigan just got El Hadi, their left guard, back for the USC game. They were missing a starter on the offensive line for a few weeks there. They're actually missing 2 starters on the offensive line. I don't believe Brady Norton is going to be back, but they did get one of those guys back. The only game where Michigan struggled to get the run going was week 2 against Oklahoma. That was on the road that was on the road in Norman against arguably the best defensive line in the country. So I'm going to cut Michigan some slack. I don't think there's a single team in the country that can run the ball on the road in Norman. So if you look at their other Power 4 games, Nebraska, Wisconsin, USC, granted, maybe not the strongest teams in the world. Well, USC is kind of strong. Their defense isn't. Nebraska's defensive front isn't good. But they ran the ball successfully in all 3 of those games. So part of me thinks, I don't know if Washington's quite physical enough to slow Michigan's run game down. But then you look at the Washington game logs, their defensive game logs against the run. Nobody has run the ball on this team so far this year. Even Ohio State, 40.6% success rate, 4.4 yards per carry. Ohio State didn't steamroll this Washington defense. Now, you also have to say they haven't seen a ton of the elite rushing attacks. Maryland is a passing offense. They can't run the ball. Rutgers is a passing offense. So they haven't seen a ton of rushing attacks, but I think we do have to show Washington's defensive front some respect. They've been very strong against the run. If you look at the right side of this chart, it seems that the Washington secondary is a little bit vulnerable to the pass. So can Bryce Underwood exploit that? I don't know. Bryce Underwood seems to be getting comfortable in his last 2 games. He's coming off the best 2 games of his career against Wisconsin and USC. Granted, maybe not the strongest defensive opponents. Wisconsin's defense is pretty good, but they seem to be falling apart as well. But Bryce Underwood seems to be getting comfortable. I think he can make some throws here on Washington. As far as betting this game, I think this is going to be a great one. I think it comes down to the last possession. When I saw it at 6.5, I grabbed Washington. So I do have a bet in this game. I'm on Washington at plus 6.5. I wouldn't hate Washington at 5.5 still. I'd probably make this game a strong 4, maybe a -4, 115 towards Michigan. I think Washington's good enough to hang with these guys. I think Damon Williams is the type of guy that's built to handle this type of environment, the way he plays and the way he handles pressure. So I think Washington can play these guys. I think it's going to be a great game, one of the more fun games of the weekend. I'm on Washington plus 6.5. I'd consider still betting it at plus 5.5. Arizona, Houston. So Houston was actually a short favorite. They were laying 2.5. We've seen nothing but Arizona money in this one. Arizona is actually favored now. They're laying 1. Arizona, Houston. Really bummed about this Arizona team, man. We all watched that Kansas State game. I know they only ended up winning by, 4 points or 6 points. The final score was actually pretty close, and Kansas State actually had a chance to win the game at the end somehow. But if you watch that game, Arizona dominated start to finish. The defense looked strong. Kansas State even played a good defensive game, and Arizona was still able to move the ball. So I thought Arizona was very impressive in that Kansas State game, and I thought they might have been a nice little dark horse in the Big 12. Look, if it was just the road loss at Iowa State, they might have been able to weather it, even though it was a 25-point loss. But, last week, that loss to BYU is an absolute backbreaker. 33-27 was the final score in double overtime. So, not that the season's completely over for Arizona, but look, it is the Big 12. It's a circus. But it's going to be tough to get to Arlington with 2 losses in conference already. So, yeah, backbreaking loss there for Arizona. The good news for Arizona is they do have some winnable games coming up, including this one. I've said multiple times I don't believe this Houston team is very good. I'm more referring to the offense when I say that rather than the defense. The defense has actually been all right, although I do have to question their strength of competition a little bit. So on paper, you'd think Arizona probably struggles to move the ball here on the road at Houston. But the thing is, with this Houston defense, they really haven't seen any quarterbacks. The only time they saw a decent passing attack was week 6 against Texas Tech. They got absolutely cooked in that game. Now, Arizona's offense is certainly not Texas Tech's offense. And to be honest, Fafita hasn't played all that well. He did light up Oklahoma State, but I saw Tulsa's backup quarterback Baylor Hayes light up Oklahoma State. So I'm certainly not throwing Fafita a parade for moving the ball in Oklahoma State. If you look at his other 3 Big 12 games, numbers don't look that efficient. 72.2 QB rating. Although I will say, Kansas State, Iowa State before the injuries, BYU, those are 3 of the toughest defenses in the conference. So I'll at least give them that. I don't have a ton of faith in Arizona moving the ball in this one. Houston's pass rush hasn't really been dangerous at all. They do blitz a lot, though. Fafita's numbers against the blitz, not all that great. So again, I don't have a ton of faith in Arizona moving the ball in this one. The reason I bet Arizona, spoiler alert, I'm on Arizona in this one, I did bet it. It's on the other side of the ball. I think this Houston offense is terrible, and I've been very vocal about that. They're 126th in success rate, 118th in PPA per play. Arizona's been excellent on the defensive side of the ball. What is Houston going to do offensively in this game? I mean, Connor Wigman's going to have a great game to stay in it. Houston has no run game whatsoever. In their last 4 games, they're averaging, 3.62 yards per carry, 39% success rate per rush. This includes games against Oklahoma State and Oregon State. Those are not good football teams. If it was just Texas Tech and Colorado, I'd be like, all right, they played a couple of tough teams. They were struggling to get the run going against Oregon State and Colorado. So Houston does not have much of a rushing attack at all. And this Arizona defense has absolutely elite numbers against the pass so far this year. Now, it does concern me that the only time Arizona's gone on the road this whole season, they've had one road game, was at Iowa State, and Rocco Beck actually pieced them up. So it does concern me that the only time that their only road game, the pass defense didn't look good. So I suppose there's my path to losing this bet. Arizona's defense, Arizona's secondary gets pieced up by Connor Wegman, but if that happens, I'll take the L. I'm on a great number in this one. I got Arizona at +2.5, I think, to win the game outright. Baylor TCU, this might be one of those games where you just can't make the total high enough. Both these teams in the top 15 of pace, both these teams in the top 15 of passing frequency. So they both move very fast, both throw the football a lot. Now, in terms of defense, you'd have to give the edge to TCU. Although, let's not sleep on this Baylor defense. And I actually thought this was interesting. This graphic, though, we're looking at the Baylor offense against TCU defense. This graphic doesn't tell the whole story. TCU's defense has been slightly better than these numbers indicate. I will say, though, it's a little concerning that the weakness of this TCU defense on paper so far this year has been against the pass, because Sawyer Robertson is piecing everybody up. And if you're worried about Sawyer Robertson playing on the road, I mean, it's not a concern. The dude set the world on fire both times he went on the road so far this year. One was against Oklahoma State, okay, but the other one was against SMU. Averaged 415 passing yards per game in his 2 road games. So both times this dude went on the road, he was slinging it. So I'm not really worried about that. Baylor's also healthier on this side of the ball. Starting right guard Agbadian, I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong, but it looks like they're getting their starting right guard back. He missed the Kansas State game. He's expected to return. And more importantly, their star running back, Bryson Washington, he's been banged up. Only 19 carries in the last 2 games. The bye week must have been exactly what he needed because they've taken him off the injury report. So it looks like Bryson Washington is a full go for this one. So Baylor's offense is also healthier. And what concerns me even more for TCU, real quick on injuries, let's give TCU, they're getting their cornerback, Avery Helm, who hasn't played since week 1. So TCU getting one of their main corners back, which is huge. But what concerns me here, what has TCU's defense struggled with? Explosive plays, 109th in the country in explosive plays allowed. Baylor's offense is an explosive play machine. That's all they do is explosive plays on the ground, through the air. So Baylor's offense is healthier. TCU's defense isn't bad, but they've struggled with big plays. Yeah, Baylor's going to score in this game. Baylor scores on everybody. Baylor's going to score in this game. The question comes on the other side of the ball. Is Baylor capable of making stops? And I feel like that's the question we're asking every single week. Now, bad news for TCU. They might have some injury concerns on the offensive line. Their starting center, Colton Deary, and their starting left guard, Cade Bennett, both listed as questionable, and neither of them have missed a game yet. So these are 2 new injuries. 2 starters on the TCU offense on the injury report listed as questionable. That's definitely a concern. And it's especially a concern because this TCU offense, now granted, we know what Sonny Dykes wants to do. They want to throw the ball. They want to do their misdirection, the veer and shoot, get the ball out of Hoover's hands fast. Now, this might be a non-issue because TCU is a pass-first offense all the way. We know what Sonny Dykes wants to do. Quick 3-step drop, get the ball out of Hoover's hands fast, the veer and shoot. We know what they want to do. So maybe their rushing numbers aren't that concerning. But in the last 4 games, we're seeing this TCU offense struggling to get things going on the ground. 2.72 yards per carry as a team, under 80 rushing yards per game. And if they're banged up on the offensive line, I mean, look, I'm not suggesting Baylor's defense can shut down TCU's offense, not even close, but certainly makes Aranda's job easier in terms of calling plays on the defense. Does Aranda call the plays? Probably should have checked. I'm pretty sure Aranda calls the play. If you're a Baylor fan, Aranda calls the plays on the defensive side of the ball. Confirm that in the comments, please. But yeah, certainly makes the defensive play calling easier for Baylor. if TCU doesn't pose a threat on the ground. And by the way, the lack of run game has been noticeable here for TCU. I mean, again, this is a pass-first offense, but we're seeing the efficiency numbers drop a little bit for Josh Hoover in his last 4 games. I mean, look, not that these are bad numbers. He's still averaging 318 passing yards per game, but 98.3 QB rating, that's low for him. That's low for this TCU offense. So we're actually seeing Josh Hoover in the passing attack feeling the effects of not having run support. Now, you might be thinking, Kyle, none of this matters because Baylor's defense is so bad. And it has been bad. I'm not sitting here trying to tell you Baylor's defense is good. What I will say, don't look now. Baylor's playing a little bit of defense in their last 3 games. Remember, Aranda is a defensive coach. He's taken a lot of criticism because that defense was bad last year. It was awful to start the season this year. Look at their last 3 games. Yes, Oklahoma State's in there, but they played a solid defensive game against Kansas State. They played a solid defensive game against Arizona State. Baylor's defense might not be practical joke terrible. It looks to be about average recently. So honestly, if this is a full 3, it's Baylor. I actually bet this game. I found a juice 3.5. So I'm on Baylor plus 3.5 at minus 120 on this one. This number should be a strong 2.5 to a light 3. So at a minus 123.5, I took it. I'm on Baylor. I think this comes down to the last possession.
Real quick, I forgot to mention there's also weather concerns in this game, which in my opinion would favor Baylor because they have the stronger run game with the better running back. So I think the weather could possibly help Baylor as well. So Baylor plus 3.5, I have it in pocket.
Army Tulane, this one was at 9. It looks like every single time this one drops down below 10, Tulane's getting bought back up. Maybe they're taking some Army money at 10, but it looks like Tulane's getting bought up every time it drops below 10. Army, Tulane, Green Wave looking to get some serious revenge from the absolute beatdown we saw in the American Athletic Conference Championship game last year. This was a slaughter, 35-14. This was the conference championship too. Army put them on them. I'm pretty sure this final score is a little generous. I don't remember the game specifically, but I remember thinking Army is killing these guys. I remember having that thought. So yeah, Tulane looking to get some revenge here. I got to say, when you first take a glance at some of the numbers, definitely concerning that Tulane seems to be struggling against the run. They're actually 130th in success rate per rush so far this year, which is the one metric you don't want to be struggling in when you play Army. Because what's the one thing Army does? They stay on the field, on the ground. They run the ball. It's not necessarily explosive. Well, last year was explosive. It's not normally explosive, but you can't get them off the field. 4 yards. 4 yards, 3 yards, 3 yards, first down. Like, you can't get them off the field. So it's certainly concerning to see Tulane struggling with exactly that. Remember, this is a Tulane defense that lost their main inside linebacker there, Dixon Nagu. I'm pretty sure he was the leading tackler. So they're missing their main tackler there. So right off the bat, we're a little bit concerned for Tulane's defense. But here's the thing. This Tulane defense, it's been so strong against the pass. They played great defense against Duke. They're like the only defense to shut Duke's passing attack down so far this year. They played great defense against ECU, another team that can throw the ball. They played great defense against Northwestern. Northwestern's offense looks better recently. So this defense against the pass is so strong that, I mean, they're playing Army at home. Army poses no threat at all. They could probably run some man coverage, load the box. I think they're in a position to absolutely sell out to take away this option, and I think it's going to work. I mean, this is Greg Gasparado's second year here as DC. And yes, he got beat down by Army in the AAC championship game. But let's not forget, he just played Navy a few weeks before that and ripped Navy apart. The final score of that game was 35-0. And Navy had a good offense last year. So it's not like Gasparado doesn't know how to defend the option. In fact, I mean, they're coming into this one with a few days rest. I think Tulane's defense is going to be ready. Let's not forget how this Army offense looked the last time they went on the road against a tough defense. 28-6. Against ECU. Now, that's slightly different. ECU has an elite run defense and Tulane doesn't, but I don't think it matters. Remember, Tulane played on Thursday night. Like I said, they had a couple extra days rest. I think Tulane's defense is going to be ready for this, and I think they're going to put out a good effort. And on the other side of the ball, I mean, if Redsaf plays well, they should have no problem scoring on this Army defense. This Army defense is a shell of what it was last year. The Tulane offensive numbers don't look great on the season, but I mean, Army just doesn't have much of a pass rush. The table is perfectly set for Redsaf to have a big game through the air. I will say Redsaf's numbers throwing the ball so far this year have been a little underwhelming, but this Army secondary is bad. And some good news for Tulane would be Redsaf is coming off by far his best game of the season throwing the football. ECU's run defense is great. So what did Retzlaff do? He needed to use his arm to win that game, and he had an excellent game. 347 yards through the air, 120.9 QB rating. Army secondary is not good. We've seen it exposed several times so far this year. Barring laying a complete egg, I think Tulane dominates this game. So if you can get an under 10, I would go with Tulane here. I think they win comfortably. Oklahoma, South Carolina, not a ton of action in this one. Pretty much just bouncing back and forth between 4.5 and 5.5. We're at 30K limits. It looks like the South Carolina 5.5s got bought up. Not that that's a huge movement, 5.5 to 4.5, but we're looking at 4.5 at the time of recording. Oklahoma, South Carolina. Who's scoring points in this game? This is... All right, so I don't trust either of these offenses. We'll start there, and you shouldn't either. Oklahoma's offense was terrible last week at Texas. Shout out to Oklahoma for that, because I had 2 units on Texas. But South Carolina's was pretty much just as bad, if not worse. Remember, we were just talking about this. South Carolina had 10 points. The touchdown came on a 72-yard touchdown run. They didn't do anything offensively in that game. So we'll start with the Oklahoma offense. Obviously, John Mateer's back, and his hand was literally bleeding in the game against Texas. Kind of crazy. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like that from a surgery 2.5 weeks prior. But from what I'm reading, he's fully medically cleared. So take that information, do with it what you will. From what I'm reading, he's fully medically cleared and good to go. I think I could speak for everyone when I say a lot of us are questioning whether or not he should have played against Texas. A lot of us are questioning how healthy he really is. Right now, he certainly looked timid in terms of using his legs, which I suppose with a hand injury for bracing yourself when you fall or maybe carrying the football, who knows? But I think I can speak for everyone where we're a little cautious as far as John Mateer's overall health right now. The concern with this Oklahoma offense, and I feel like I've been saying this several times this year, if you remember, Oklahoma had one of the worst offenses in the SEC last year. In fact, it might have been the worst SEC offense. And this year happened. They bring in Mateer, and he looks excellent. He looks like a Heisman Trophy candidate. He lived up to the hype. He far exceeded my expectations. He looked excellent. And I think everyone's opinion of the Oklahoma offense changed. And I was just talking about this before the Texas game. In my opinion, now speaking solely on the eye test right now with Oklahoma's offense, in my opinion, my feeling when I watch the Oklahoma's offense is I'm not sure if this offense is that much better than last year's. I just think they have a superstar quarterback, because every single time Oklahoma makes a play, it's pretty much Mateer doing something Mateer-like, like scrambling out of the pocket, making a throw, making a tackler miss, and converting a 3rd and 9 with his legs. It's Mateer doing Mateer things. So in my opinion, the rest of the offense is pretty similar to last year's. They're still dealing with injuries on the offensive line. Derek Simmons, Logan Howland both missed the Texas game. Pretty sure they're both going to miss this game as well. Actually, I'm pretty sure that's confirmed that they're both. I don't want to misspeak. So Derek Simmons and Logan Howland, 2 starting offensive linemen. I'm pretty sure they're both going to miss this one as well. They were both out in the Texas game. We've seen this Oklahoma offense struggle to run the ball last year. It's carried over into this year. In their Power 4 games so far this year against Michigan, Auburn, and Texas, they're averaging 2.35 yards per carry as a team, under 74 yards rushing. I mean, this team's rushing offense is Mateer. They don't have much support from the running back position. The offensive line is not generating a ton of push. So again, my overall feelings on this team is it's all Mateer. If they can go as far as Mateer takes them, I don't think this is a very good offense. And I think that was on full display in the Texas game. We got a glimpse into what Oklahoma's offense looks like if Mateer doesn't play great. And it doesn't look pretty at all. So I doubt Oklahoma's able to run the ball here. Now, the one aspect of this South Carolina defense that I trust most is the pass rush. Mateer is good at handling pressure. I know the throwing numbers don't look great, 57.5 QB rating under pressure, but he's got great escapability. So I do think he's equipped to handle it if he's healthy. As a whole, I don't expect this Oklahoma offense to do much. This South Carolina defense may be a little bit disappointing. Certainly not the defense it was last year, but I don't expect this Oklahoma offense to do much. But on the other side of the ball, what in the hell are we expecting South Carolina's offense to do? I mean, we talked about Oklahoma's offensive line problems. I mean, that's nothing compared to the problems South Carolina's offensive line is having. So this is what I wrote down. This is what I could decipher from the injury reports. These are tough to follow. Starting right tackle Kason Henry hasn't played since week 4. So he's listed as questionable, but the phrasing was he's hopefully nearing a return. So it doesn't sound like he's going to be back. So it looks like the starting right tackle for South Carolina is going to miss another game. Left guard, Shedrick Surratt Jr. He got injured in the LSU game. He's listed as questionable. This is a concern because he's already the backup. Because the starting guard at the beginning of the season was Marquis Anderson. He was injured in week 1 against Virginia Tech. He will not be back for this one. So their left guard's been out since week 1. The guy who's been starting in his spot is Surratt Jr. He just got hurt. So which means they might be back down to their third string guard there. Here's where it gets crazy. Their third string guard is Nolan Hay. He's listed as questionable. He's played a lot of snaps this year in place of other injuries. He's hurt as well. So they might have their 5th guard out there and their backup right tackle. This offensive line is a mess, and so it hasn't really been talked about as much as some of the other injured offensive lines. South Carolina's offensive line is in a bad place right now. And remember, this is a program that has a history of shaky offensive lines. You remember the Spencer Rattler team? That Spencer Rattler year, he spent the entire season running for his life. So this is a program that has a history of offensive line problems. And you want to know what makes it worse? They're playing Oklahoma. Oklahoma probably has the best defensive line in the country. Maybe not the best overall defense, although these numbers make it look so. Maybe not the best overall defense, but I would take Oklahoma's defensive line over any other team's defensive line in the country. So this is just the worst matchup possible to go into with a banged up offensive line. This Oklahoma defensive line, look at their games against Power 4 opponents so far this year. Michigan, Auburn, Texas, 4.84 yards per play, success rate under 31%. This defense is elite. I could poke holes in Oklahoma's offense. Defense is out of this world. And this South Carolina team, this is a team that wants to run the ball. We've seen them try to run the ball last year, a lot this year. In their SEC games this year, they're averaging 3.11 yards per carry. That's against Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Missouri, and LSU. Good defenses, I'll give you those. But Vanderbilt and Kentucky, you should be able to. They haven't been able to run the ball on any SEC team so far this year. And now they're playing the best defensive line in the conference, possibly the country. Lenora Sellers is going to be running for his life. He's going to be in absolute prison in this game. And this is a guy that has struggled under pressure so far this year. Oklahoma leads the country in pressure rate. They also send a lot of blitzes. This is the worst matchup possible for South Carolina's offense. Now, here's the thing. If you're trying to take the points with South Carolina here, I do have one thing for you, and it's kind of an important aspect. So this is something for you if you're trying to take the points with South Carolina. Oklahoma's defense has one weak metric. They've been susceptible to some big plays. They're actually 124th in explosive play rate allowed. South Carolina's offense, that's pretty much all they've done so far is Sellers connecting on a big throw to that wide receiver. What the hell's his name? It's number 4, big guy. He's like 6'5". He's like a big play threat. So South Carolina, their offense, the only thing they've consistently shown us is they can connect on a big play or two. Remember, last week against LSU, they scored 1 touchdown. It was an explosive play. So you could say your path here, you don't trust Oklahoma's offense, and you probably shouldn't. And you think South Carolina will connect on a big play or two? I could see a path to a South Carolina cover with that handicap. I can see that. The problem is, on this same graphic, look at havoc created. 2nd for Oklahoma, 94th for South Carolina. This Oklahoma defensive line is going to live in the backfield, and Sellers is going to be running for his life. So when I first looked at this one, I was like, can't lay 5.5 with Oklahoma. What are you, nuts? On the road? In their first road SEC game? No shot. The more I looked at it, the more I think Oklahoma's the play. I don't know if South Carolina hits 10 points in this game. I think if Oklahoma gets to 17, they cover it. Also not mad at an under. But remember, Mateer, if he's healthy, which is a big if he's healthy, he's a one-man show, and he can get the ball in the end zone a couple times for Oklahoma, which is probably all they're going to need. So I actually am on the Oklahoma side here. I think I need a flat 4 to actually bet it, but I think Oklahoma's going to cover this number. Boomer Sooner. Let's do it. West Virginia's at the bounce house, and this is a West Virginia team that might be in a bit of a tailspin. They got blown out by Kansas. They got blown out by Utah. And don't be fooled by that final score against BYU. They scored a little bit late to stay in it. BYU was beating them up pretty good. So, yeah, this West Virginia team seems to be in a bit of a tailspin. Their top 2 quarterbacks are currently hurt. Nico's out for the season. Henderson, I don't know if he's out for the season, but he's also hurt. It looks like Max Brown is listed as probable, but he's going to be the backup. I would imagine Khalil Wilkins is going to get another start. He's a freshman. This will be his third start. Not that he's looked absolutely terrible. He's a freshman, but this West Virginia offense isn't good. The only thing they can possibly do is run the ball, and Wilkins does give them some athleticism from the quarterback position. UCF's defense has been pretty vulnerable to the run at times this year. UCF's defense hasn't seen a ton of rushing attacks, but when they did see them, they kind of got run on a little bit. The secondary is also vulnerable. I don't think this is a UCF defense that's very good, to be honest. So, look, I don't think it's crazy that we see Rich Rod's offense work a little bit. I know this West Virginia offense has been terrible, but like I said, I don't think these numbers show that UCF's defense is not very good. So like I said, I don't think it's crazy to say that West Virginia is able to run the ball a little bit in this game. We saw Kansas State absolutely steamroll this UCF defense. Kansas and Cincinnati, the rushing numbers didn't look that great, but they didn't need to run the ball because they were throwing the ball without issues. West Virginia is also getting Landon Livingston back from injury. That's their starting center. Now, they're still very injured at the running back position, but like I said, I don't think UCF's defense is very good. I think they fooled us in the North Carolina game into thinking they're a good defense, but in reality, North Carolina is just terrible. So, yeah, I think West Virginia is able to run the ball a little bit in this game. The question is on the other side. We're talking about West Virginia's defense on the road in the bounce house, and the main question is, how healthy is Taven Jackson? That's the quarterback for UCF. Remember, he injured his shoulder, came back the following week, and then injured the same shoulder. Now, they're saying he's healthy, but that's what they said when he came back, and then he injured the same shoulder. So I'm definitely a little bit skeptical as to the health of Taven Jackson. And this is a serious question because their backup quarterback, Ja'Cory Brown, he's also injured. He hasn't even been active the last couple of games, and we've seen this UCF offense look way worse with the third-string quarterback. So I'm reading Taven Jackson is playing. I'm reading he's healthy. If he's healthy, they should not have problems moving the ball against this West Virginia defense. West Virginia is another defense that kind of fooled us there. Through their first 3 games, they had elite defensive numbers. They played a great defensive game against Pitt at home, and we were like, hey, this West Virginia defense is pretty good. Well, in the last 3 games, they actually started seeing some Big 12 opponents that are decent. They're allowing 42.3 points per game, success rate up close to 50%, 7 yards per play. So we've seen this West Virginia defense completely fall off a cliff. So if Taven Jackson's playing, UCF should score. This is the way I look at the game. If you tell me right now Taven Jackson's playing and is 100%, obviously not information that I have, but if you give me that information confirmed, I'm taking the over. I think this flies over 46.5 and is way too low. Remember, it's Rich Rod. He runs this crazy fast pace. If Taven Jackson is out, I'd honestly consider West Virginia at the plus 7.5, but I don't want to be on West Virginia if Taven Jackson's playing and is healthy. I'm reading he's playing, so give me the over, 46.5. If we hear a couple hours before kick that Taven Jackson is not going to play or is hobbled or something, I wouldn't be mad at a West Virginia plus 7.5. So put the over up as my pick. If Taven Jackson's playing a quarterback for UCF, this one goes over. Buffalo, UMass. Check out this score here. This is a real score. This is not a typo. UMass just got beat 42-6 by Kent State. Again, not a typo. They got beat by 36 points by Kent State. Kent State quarterback Drew DeShields threw 4 touchdowns in the game. Just wow. There are no words to describe this. You look at UMass's offensive numbers on the road at Kent State, and you ask, are these real? They had 6 points, success rate under 33%, 3.3 yards per play against Kent State. Again, there are no words. Now, to be fair to UMass, they did play that game without their main running back and main receiver, Jaquan Gibson and Rocco Griffin. Both missed that game. They're both listed as questionable here. And that is literally their leading receiver and main running back. So obviously important players to the offense. Maybe they get these guys back. But UMass has now scored 0 points. Check this out. UMass has now scored 0 points in the second half of 4 straight football games. 4 straight football games where they've posted a 0 in the second half. Just wow. So anyway, let's get into this matchup. I kind of want to take UMass, despite everything I just said. My first thought when I look at this game, I don't care how bad UMass is. Who the hell is Buffalo to lay 17 points on the road? This offense is not good, guys. Remember, they had a good year last year. They shocked some people, and they brought back a lot of production. So there was a lot of college football heads that were big on Buffalo coming into the season, and I didn't disagree. The defensive front is good. So the defensive front is good. They also have a good running back. So I understand why people were big on Buffalo, but one of the players they lost from last year's team is C.J. Agbana. He's the quarterback. That's kind of an important position. Taquan Roberson's been playing quarterback for Buffalo instead, and there's a clear drop-off. They're not getting the same production out of Roberson that they got out of Agbana last year. This offense, 99th in success rate, 84th in PPA per play. Again, I'm not indicating that I think UMass can shut them down. I'm sure they're going to be able to hand the ball off, but if you had to pick a strength for this UMass team, and using the word strength and UMass in the same sentence almost feels like a criminal act, but if you had to pick a strength for this UMass team, you'd have to point to the run defense. They have done not a decent job. It's just slightly less terrible than the rest of the team. That's all Buffalo can do. And look, I'm concerned about this Buffalo offense. We just saw this offense struggling to move the chains at home against Eastern Michigan, who up to that point had been one of the worst defenses in the conference. Now, Eastern Michigan, we were just talking about this game. Maybe Eastern Michigan is playing some defense better defense as of late, but still, at home against Eastern Michigan, a success rate under 35%. That is not good. Now, Buffalo also has an injury on the offensive line here. Their center, Jake Timms. Center could be an important position to some teams. He's listed as questionable for this one. So maybe missing the center is a big deal. I don't think this Buffalo offense is good. So as bad as I believe UMass to be, and that's pretty bad, I don't believe Buffalo's offense is very good. And look, the UMass defense in their last two games, it's 5.79 yards per play, almost 50% success rate. It's terrible. We're talking about catching 17 points at home. And I forgot to add that the UMass defense is dealing with injuries also, but it's two of their top four corners and their safety, D.D. Snyder. They're all listed as questionable. So three of the five starters in the secondary are listed as questionable. But again, I don't believe Buffalo can throw the ball. So, I mean, their secondary is so bad, maybe it doesn't matter. But I don't think Buffalo is very good offensively. They're going to hand the ball off. They're going to run the ball. But I'm going to need more than that to lay 17. On the other side of the ball, UMass offensively, we just talked about how they scored 0 points in 4 straight second halves. They're terrible. But if they get their running back and wide receiver back, and it's not a bad matchup for UMass. UMass is a passing offense all the way. They're actually 10th in the country in pass frequency. The weakness of this Buffalo defense by far is the secondary, and that we saw it last year. We've seen it a few times this year. We saw it in week 3. Buffalo went on the road to Kent State. They almost lost that game. The secondary was struggling to cover the Kent State receivers. 8.5 yards per pass attempt. They allowed 279 yards through the air to Kent State. So I think there's a path for UMass to bounce back. Give me UMass or the under. The only reason I have notes on this game is we talked about it on the live stream. So UMass or the under. Purdue Northwestern, some ping pong action here. Looks like Northwestern's getting hit at 3, but Purdue's getting hit at 3.5. At the time of recording, we're up to 20K limits, and we're looking at a flat 3. Purdue Northwestern. So there were 3.5s earlier in the week, and I guess I agree with the number coming off 3.5. But I gotta say, if this one drops below 3, I think the move would be to take Northwestern here. Northwestern just getting a piece back on defense. Their defensive back, Josh Fusell, he's returning from injury. I think he returned last week. Remember, this is a Northwestern defense that lost one of their main linebackers there, Karlaftis, the guy on the Chiefs, his little brother. He's out for the season, one of their main linebackers. So they're getting a piece in the secondary back. The reason I lean towards Northwestern here, if you can get it under a field goal, I'm looking at these numbers right here. Out of nowhere, Purdue started running the football. And I mean out of nowhere, because they were not running the ball earlier in the season. Out of nowhere, Purdue in their last 2 games is averaging over 6.2 yards per carry, 54.8% success rate per rush. Out of nowhere, Purdue comes out with a physical run game that can't be stopped. I personally don't think this is sustainable. I think there's maybe a little bit of an element of surprise here mixed in. Their starting left guard, Jalen St. John, is injured, and he might miss this game, so they might be missing an offensive lineman. And I think now that this Purdue offense, we're seeing Ryan Brown's production fall off. We'll talk about it in a second, and it seems like they're more run-reliant now. I think it puts Northwestern in a pretty good space at home defensively. Northwestern just saw UCLA and Penn State. Obviously, Penn State loaded with talent. UCLA has been running the ball on everybody, In those games, they allowed 4.47 yards per carry, 43.1% success rate per rush. So they just saw two solid rushing attacks, and they did a solid job limiting them on the ground. I mentioned Ryan Brown. I mean, earlier in the season, we were seeing Purdue throw the ball. I'm not sure how much of a threat Ryan Brown poses in this game. Remember, this is on the road. Northwestern plays in that weird temporary stadium by the lake. Should be very windy. We've seen his passing production fall off a cliff here. Started off the season, he was piecing up some teams, but last 4 games, 68.4 QB rating. I mean, he's not taking advantage of the opportunities when he has a clean pocket. His passing numbers has fallen off a cliff. So combine that with the fact that he's on the road in what might be a very windy day. I think Northwestern's defense, seeing what Purdue's done offensively the last couple of games, I think they're going to come in with a game plan to take away the run, and I think it's going to work, honestly. The question is, do we trust Northwestern to move the ball? Because we do have to give Barry Odom some credit. He comes in here, it's year 1. Right off the bat, we're seeing Purdue with a much tougher, much more physical defensive front 7. They've done a solid job against the run so far this year. You look at their last 2 games, they're allowing under 74 rushing yards per game, under 2.5 yards per carry against Minnesota and Illinois. And this is a Northwestern team that wants to run the ball. Now, are they able to run the ball on Purdue? It's tough to say because Purdue's looked to lead against the run. But you know what? This Northwestern run game is really coming around. I wasn't expecting this. But if you look at their last 4 games, 4.82 yards per carry, 48.5% success rate per rush. So Northwestern has been running the ball. There's some decent defenses in there. Oregon, Penn State, to be fair, they broke like a 70-yard touchdown run on Oregon to pad the stats a little bit in garbage time. So, but I mean, they've been consistently running the ball here. And don't look now. We all saw Preston Stone throw what was 1 million interceptions in the opener against Tulane. But Preston Stone's playing some good football. Preston Stone finally starting to resemble the 5-star recruit he once was. He's been pretty efficient throwing the ball. So the way these two teams are playing right now, I think Purdue's offense on the road here, if it's going to be a windy day, I think it's pretty predictable. I think Northwestern's playing some good football. If it's under a field goal, I'm on Northwestern here. I might even bet this. I haven't bet it, but I think you can only get a juice 2.5 at the moment. If I can get a 2.5 minus 110, don't be surprised if I end up with a ticket on Northwestern, if I end up sharing it in the group. I'm leaning Northwestern here if I can get it under a field goal. Northern Illinois, Ohio. So I know everyone's concerned about the Ball State game, right? You lose outright to a bad Ball State team. Here's the thing. It was a terrible spot for Ohio, and you should know that if you watch this channel because Ball State was my biggest bet of the Saturday. I was all in on Ball State plus 17.5. So yeah, they lose outright. It's a bad loss for Ohio, 100%. But like I said, I mean, Ohio was just coming off a game against Bowling Green, immediately traveling to Ball State, who was coming off a bye week. Ohio was also dealing with injuries on the defensive side. And from what I was reading, it seemed like they were going to rest those guys before the bye week so they'd be ready for here. And at this moment, those 2 pieces I'm looking at are still questionable. Jugo, I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. That's a defensive tackle. He's questionable, and so is their linebacker, Jack Freeze. I cannot confirm that these guys are going to play. Based on what I was reading 2 weeks ago, it kind of sounded like they were holding them out for this game. So personally, you ask my personal opinion, I think they're going to play. The one guy's a senior, and it's senior day for Ohio. I think they're going to play. And I think this Ohio defense coming off the bye, this is not a good defense, don't get me wrong, but they're coming off the bye week. I think they're going to be healthier, and they're playing Northern Illinois. This offense is terrible. They're 136th in success rate. Look, I know Ohio's defense hasn't looked good this year, but we're talking about an offense that was just struggling to move the ball against Eastern Michigan. Under 4.8 yards per play, 29.2% success rate against Eastern Michigan. They were held to 10 points. Eastern Michigan has looked like the worst defense in the MAC for most of this season, although they have been playing some better defense as of late. But no, this is not a good offense. This might be the worst offense in the conference. And again, I don't think the Ohio defense is good, but coming off the bye week and healthier, they can make stops against Northern Illinois. And on the other side of the ball, Northern Illinois' defense is far better than I was expecting, and they deserve some credit. They lost most of their starters from last year's team. I thought they were going to really suck, and it looks like I was right on the offensive side of the ball. The defense is stepping up, and again, I want to give them some credit. This is a tough one, though. On the road against the Ohio Bobcats, this is arguably the best offense in the conference. You look at this graphic, and you're like, oh, Northern Illinois' defense has been slightly better than Ohio's offense. Not really. That's a little misleading. Ohio's played Rutgers, West Virginia, Ohio State, They played a much stronger offense. Remember, this is the conference champions right now, returning their quarterback, who Parker Navarro is a senior. It's senior day. Look, I know Ohio had a shaky offensive game against Ball State in a terrible spot, but let's not forget how strong this offense looked in the previous 2 games before that, before they went out on the road. Their last 2 home games, 43.5 points per game. You got Parker Navarro at home, coming off a bye week on senior day. Yeah, this is a blowout. I disagree with the market buying this number down. I don't know what they're seeing in Northern Illinois. I like Ohio by 20 plus, so I laid it. Bobcats. Old Dominion, James Madison, huge game. This is a huge game. The winner of this game most likely plays in the Sun Belt Championship game. And I know that's wild to say on October 17th, but when we're talking about the Sun Belt East Division, James Madison and Old Dominion are so much better than their opponents. And I apologize, Marshall fans, if that offends you. Dude, Old Dominion's so much better than you. I know you guys just got the win. They gifted you 5 turnovers. Old Dominion and James Madison, anybody who follows this division will tell you have been hands down the best 2 teams in this division. And if Old Dominion loses this game, they're not going to play in the Sun Belt Championship game. If they win this game, they've got 1 loss column in terms of the conference. They've got a tiebreaker over James Madison, who's their biggest threat. So whoever wins this game is going to be in the driver's seat when it comes to playing in the Sun Belt Championship game. Thanks to this beauty right here against Marshall, 48-24, Old Dominion is now in a spot where they need to win or it's a wrap. You can't go 2 games back in the loss column in conference to James Madison and give him the tiebreaker. It would pretty much be over for Old Dominion. So this is a win or go home situation for Old Dominion. As far as matching these 2 teams up, I mean, this is tough. Old Dominion going on the road against James Madison's defense, which is always tough. They're specifically strong against the run, which is a concern. This is an Old Dominion offense that wants to run the ball. If you look at James Madison's defensive game log so far this year, nobody's run the ball on this team, and that's concerning to see nothing but green in that rushing column there. And it's not like they haven't played anybody. They saw Liberty, who, granted, not the best year for Liberty. They're still a talented team. They saw Louisville, so it's not like they didn't see anybody. I will say, though, none of these teams fit the description of Old Dominion. None of these teams have a quarterback that can run like Colton Joseph. This Old Dominion rushing attack is very unique because Colton Joseph's arguably like their best weapon. I mean, he's so athletic. So this is kind of like what Duke did with Riley Leonard. With Notre Dame did with Riley Leonard last year. This is a very unique rushing attack, and even though nobody has run the ball on James Madison yet, I personally think Old Dominion is going to move the ball in this game. I mean, if you just isolate Old Dominion to just their road games, just their tough games here, Indiana, Virginia Tech, and Marshall. Maybe Marshall doesn't belong on this list, but this is their 3 road games. 27.7 points per game, 7.4 yards per play. I think Old Dominion's going to move the ball in this game because I think Old Dominion's offense is a wagon. And on the other side of the ball, I mean, Old Dominion should have the advantage. Now, huge news for James Madison. Looks like they're getting their star running back, George Pettaway, back. And, I mean, he really hasn't been 100% all season. He had 10 carries in the opener, and then, in week 2, he had, 4 carries. He hasn't been 100% all season. I'm reading he was taken off the injury report. So James Madison looked like they're finally getting their star running back. Who knows if he's 100%? We'll have to wait and see. That would be huge for this offense, though. To be honest, though, I'm still not 100% convinced James Madison can consistently move the ball in this game. I think this Old Dominion defense is very good. This is a very tough defensive front. And you might say, well, Kyle, Marshall just scored 48 points. Yeah, they had 48 on the final score. Old Dominion gifted them 40 of those points on 5 turnovers. You actually look at the defensive numbers, 34.6% success rate. Old Dominion played a solid defensive game. There was turnovers. They kept giving the ball away. Also, good news for Old Dominion. Their starting safety and leading tackler, Jerome Carter, been upgraded to probable. So he's probably going to play in this game. He's been banged up. So look, as far as betting this game, I lean towards Old Dominion. I think they're the better team, and they're getting plus 2.5. There's an aspect of, all right, I'm going to give you an NFL comp. So James Madison's the top dog in this division, in this conference, and Old Dominion looks like the stronger team so far this year. It'd be like if the Chargers are 9-0 in first place in the AFC West going on the road to Arrowhead, where it's like, okay, the Chargers have been better this year, and they're in first place. Well, the Old Dominion's not in first place, but you get it. They've looked better this year, but until they dethrone the Chiefs, until they dethrone the sitting top dog, which is James Madison, there's always the big brother effect. So is Old Dominion going to get big brothered here? Not sure. This feels very coin flippy. I'll take the better team plus 2.5, or what I believe to be the better team at plus 2.5. Should be a great game, though. One of the Sun Belt games of the year. SMU Clemson. It looks like the early action was coming in on Clemson in this one. It got up to 10. It's tough to say. Look, obviously, this big movement is due to the Cade Klubnik injury news. It doesn't just drop from 9.5 to 5. So I'm assuming that's based on the injury news. It looks like SMU did get hit at 10 originally. At the time of recording, we're looking at 5. We don't have a definitive answer on Cade Klubnik. SMU Clemson, we got a rematch of the ACC championship game. And for those of you that didn't watch college football last year, you missed a good one. This was a fun game. So the final score was 34-31, but Clemson took a 24-7 lead. They were up 24-7 at halftime and got the ball in the third quarter. So in the third quarter, they were up 24-7 with the ball. Jennings ended up he was ripping throws in that game. SMU came all the way back, tied at 31-31. And then I'm pretty sure Klubnik had a big run on I'm pretty sure he scrambled out to the right. I think I'm remembering the play correctly. So I'm pretty sure Klubnik made a big play with his legs to set up the game-winning field goal for Clemson to win it and win the conference. But this was one of the best postseason college football games of the year. So we get a rematch here. Obviously, the lead story in this one is the health of quarterback Cade Klubnik. He sprained his ankle last week against Boston College. He's officially listed as a game-time decision. The backup quarterback, whose name is Christopher Vizina, he came in and immediately threw an interception last week against Boston College. In fact, I believe it was his first pass attempt. So Klubnik sprained his ankle. The backup came in, threw a pick on his first attempt, which isn't a very endearing sign. The thing is, and this might sound a little bit crazy, but how big of a drop-off are we expecting from Klubnik to Vizina? Now, I'm not saying from Klubnik in general. I'm not saying from last year's Klubnik. I'm saying from the production we've gotten from the quarterback position so far this year for Clemson, how big of a drop-off are we expecting to Christopher Vizina? Keep in mind, Christopher Vizina is a 4-star. He was a top 10 quarterback recruit in 2023. He's been with Clemson for 2 years now. He knows the system. He's probably the next guy up there. So, I mean, is it that crazy to say that Christopher Vizina is probably pretty good? And, I mean, they're at home against an SMU defense that looks nothing like last year's SMU defense. They haven't been able to generate much of a pass rush at all. He should have clean pockets to throw from. And, again, Klubnik hasn't played very well this year. I mean, look at his numbers from a clean pocket. He hasn't even been very efficient. So what is it? Is it that crazy to say it won't be much of a drop-off from the quarterback production we've seen so far this year? I don't think that's a crazy thing to say. I mean, look, we don't even know if it's going to be Vizina. For all we know, I could be saying this and Klubnik ends up playing. I'm just saying if Vizina plays, I wouldn't be surprised if he actually plays pretty well. This SMU defense hasn't been very strong this year. I know you look at their year-long numbers, 57th in success rate, 26th in PPA per play. But the thing is, they've been pretty fortunate with their schedule. And if you take a look at their game logs, both the times SMU saw good offenses, Baylor, TCU, both of those games, they got cooked through the air. And I mean cooked. In the Baylor and TCU games, they allowed 409.5 passing yards per game. Now, I'm not suggesting that Clemson's backup quarterback can do this. I'm just saying SMU's defense is clearly not what it was last year. Like I said, they don't have much of a pass rush. They're also a little thin. They're missing one. They should be missing one of their main corners, Jalen Davis Robinson. He hasn't missed a game yet. He's listed as questionable. It doesn't look like he's going to play. So this will be the first game he missed. And they're also missing linebacker Justin Medlock. This will also be the first game he's missed. So 2 new injuries to this SMU defense. So again, I know this might be kind of a crazy thing to say, but I think Clemson is moving the ball in this SMU defense regardless of who's playing quarterback. The more interesting part of this matchup is on the other side of the ball. SMU's offense, we know it's explosive. We know Jennings can make throws. We know he was piecing up Clemson's defense last year in the second half. This year's Clemson defense hasn't been absolutely elite, but it's still been pretty damn good. Here's my problem when it comes to SMU's offense this year. Again, it's been good. Jennings has been explosive throwing the ball. But here's my problem. First of all, they haven't had much of a run game, not much of an efficient rushing attack all season. Second of all, Look at the game logs here. What is the best defense that SMU has seen so far this year? Seriously, look at it. What's the best defense they've seen? TCU? TCU's the strongest defense they've seen. Now, TCU's defense is better than last year, but that's certainly not a good defense. That's the strongest defense you've seen. You haven't been able to run the ball against Syracuse, TCU, Baylor, Stanford. Couldn't get the run going against those teams. Now you're going to go to Clemson. And by the way, SMU's offense probably going to be missing their lead receiver, Romello Brinson. He was added to the injury report this week, and his status to play is looking, and I quote, in doubt. So it's looking like they're going to be missing their main receiver. Again, a very pass-reliant offense. Yeah, I like Clemson. I think they win this game comfortably. The problem is backup quarterback makes it too weird to bet because who really knows what we're going to see? And on top of that, I mean, Jennings is so electric after seeing him come back down 3 scores in the second half in the ACC championship game against this same team. It's the kind of thing where I don't know if I want to lay a big number because I feel like that dude is talented enough to just spoil any cover. Even if Clemson's up 24-7 again, I wouldn't feel safe. So Jennings is just way too talented. I like Clemson, but I couldn't end up betting it. I mean, maybe if Klubnik is announced in and I could still get less than a touchdown, maybe, but just a Clemson for me, but I didn't bet it. Wyoming Air Force, not a ton of action to this one. It's been sitting at 4.5 for a few days now. We're at 10K limits. Wyoming Air Force, we'll start with the Air Force defense, and I'm not going to sugarcoat this. This Air Force defense is absolutely awful. They're 127th in success rate, 136th in PPA. On paper, they're the worst pass defense in the country. 136 out of 136 in both success rate and PPA per dropback. I get it. It's one of the worst defenses in the country on paper so far this year, especially against the pass. And Wyoming, it's not a good offense at all, but they do have a quarterback capable of throwing the ball in Caden Anderson. That being said, this Wyoming offense, let's not pretend like it's some dangerous threat. We've seen this Wyoming offense struggle against Akron in the opener. They were held to 10 points against Akron in the opener. And then week 6 at home in Laramie against a really bad UNLV defense, they were held to 17 points under 5 yards per play. So look, this Air Force defense is bad. Not trying to tell you it's good. I'm just saying this Wyoming offense is not good. And when it comes to the Air Force defense, I don't want to make it seem like I'm trying to sugarcoat it or gas up this Air Force defense. It's bad. It's really bad. The secondary is terrible. But look at who they played. Can we cut this defense a little bit of slack? What's the worst offense that Air Force has seen here? Utah State? And Utah State, their offense looks good as hell. I think Utah State or Hawaii, maybe Hawaii's the worst offense they've seen. Hawaii put up a big number on Air Force. We just saw Hawaii put up 44 on Utah State as well. They've actually scored 40-plus points in back-to-back games. It looks like the Hawaii passing attack is coming around. So, all right, the defense looks terrible. We have to acknowledge that they've played 5 good offenses in a row, nonstop. 5 consecutive games without a bye week against good offenses. Wyoming's offense is a huge step down for this Air Force defense. So, look, is Air Force defense going to play a good game? Probably not, but I think they can make a few stops and look slightly better in this one. And in my opinion, that's all they're going to need because the Air Force offense is a wagon. They keep losing football games, so it's not really being talked about. This Air Force offense can score. They're 9th in success rate, 6th in PPA per play. Not in the Mountain West, in the country. This Air Force offense looks absolutely excellent, and I know there's some injuries to wide receiver here. Trey Robertson and Quinn Smith, that's 2 of their top 3 receivers. They both didn't play last week, but in that game, without 2 of their top 3 receivers, they went on the road to UNLV and hung 48. Over 7.2 yards per play. 58.5% success rate is crazy. So even without the wide receivers, they hung a big number up on the road at UNLV. And look, I do want to give Wyoming's defense some credit. It's the strength of the team. I didn't think it was going to be very good this year. It's been okay, and they actually played back-to-back good defensive games against UNLV and San Jose State. Held them to 4.54 yards per play, under 39% success rate, under 30 points per game. They played a fast-paced game, so they played back-to-back good defensive games. But both those games were at home in Laramie, where historically, Wyoming's always a tough defense there. This defense never seems to be as good on the road, and the last time we saw Wyoming go on the road, they got smoked by Colorado. Over 8.4 yards per play allowed to a Colorado offense that I don't even think is as good as Air Force offense. So I think Air Force could score 50 points in this game. I'm on Air Force. This is my dog walk of the day here. I think Air Force is about to smoke them. I'm on Air Force. UNLV, Boise State, and the action's been coming in pretty one way on this one. Was at 10.5, and the number's been consistently moving towards Boise. Haven't seen any buyback on the UNLV side yet. At the time of recording, we're at 13. UNLV, Boise State. So UNLV's getting another shot at these guys. Remember, this was the Mountain West rivalry last year. They played in the Mountain West championship game. You can make the argument that UNLV should have got them in week 9. That was at home. If you watch that game, UNLV blew it. They had it. Boise State ended up winning 29-24. The Mountain West championship game, though, they should not have had that one. Boise State controlled that game start to finish. That was with Ashton Genty, obviously. But yeah, this was the Mountain West rivalry. This is a couple of great games we saw. Well, week 9 was a great game. Mountain West championship may be a little boring, but this was a cool little rivalry last year. Now, those were Barry Odom's UNLV teams. Obviously, we have Dan Mullen now. It's kind of a new era of UNLV football. But I got to say, the offense has... Look, I don't think a lot of people are big on this UNLV team despite them being 6-0, and I completely understand why. Tough to argue with these offensive numbers. Yeah, the strength of schedule is a little iffy, but 24th in success rate, 24th in PPA per play against a Boise State defense that is having problems with the run, specifically explosive runs. They're giving up chunk plays on the ground. We were just talking about this on the live show last night, and UNLV could do that. They could rip off chunk plays on the ground. Now, as far as throwing the ball, definitely a little concerned that Colege's worst 2 games of the year by far were their two tough road games against Miami of Ohio and Wyoming. Laramie's a tough place to play. Miami of Ohio's got a solid defense. Not giving him excuses. I'm just saying it's a little concerning. His 2 worst games of the year were his 2 tough road games. And now we're talking about going to Boise State to play the top team in the conference. Not exactly what you like to see. When it comes to Boise State's defense, all right, so there's 2 ways to interpret this data right here. So here is the Boise State defensive game log split into 2 halves. On the left side, you have Boise State's home games. Elite defensive numbers. They're allowing less than 4 yards per play, 27.1% success rate. They played elite defense at home. On the right side of this graphic, you have their defensive numbers in their road games. Terrible, allowing over 7.2 yards per play. So you could say, hey, this Boise State defense plays great at home. Okay, that's fair. But also, look at the names. They played much worse offenses at home. Eastern Washington is an FCS program. App State, tough year for App State. New Mexico's a pretty good offense, but nowhere near the offenses on the other side. In their road games, they played South Florida, Air Force, and Notre Dame. So you could say, hey, Boise State plays great defense at home. Or you could say, hey, Boise State plays great defense against bad offenses, and they struggle against good offenses. Because if we're looking at this graphic, yes, this game is at home, but UNLV, in terms of offensive firepower, would be closer to the teams on the right side than the left, a lot closer to the teams on the right side than the left side. So I'm not sure how much I trust this Boise State defense. I think we're still trying to get a feel for what this defense is. The data points are kind of everywhere. And look, one of the strengths of this Boise State defense so far this year has been the pass rush. They're actually generating pressure at a high rate. They're blitzing a lot. But Colenger's actually handled it really well. He's got great numbers under pressure. He actually has elite numbers against the blitz so far this year. Now, like I said, Colenger is struggling in his 2 road games, but as far as dealing with a pass rush, Colenger's really handled himself well. I think UNLV can run the ball. I think Colenger can make throws here against a Boise State defense that might be a little bit undervalued. I think UNLV can score points, but when we get to the other side of the ball, this UNLV defense, man, this is a bad defense, and they're going on the road against Boise. Boise State's offense is definitely underwhelming so far this year, but I mean, we're seeing UNLV defense struggle with Idaho State. They played well against Sam Houston and Wyoming. They played 2 sound defensive games, but Miami of Ohio lit them up, and Miami of Ohio, DeQuan Finn got hurt in that game. Miami of Ohio's backup quarterback came in and was making throws. UCLA was running the ball on UNLV. Air Force absolutely ripped them up, hung 48 points on them. So this UNLV defense, it's really shaky. If you're trying to bet UNLV, you can point at the fact that this Boise State run game really not working in their last 3 games. Against, if it was just Notre Dame, I would say, okay, no big deal. But their last 3 games, App State, New Mexico, Notre Dame, 3.19 yards per carry. That That should not say that against App State and New Mexico. Boise State's run game needs to be better, but there's nothing about UNLV's defense that gives me faith that they could stop Boise State's offense here. And Maddox Madsen, I have some criticism on him as well, but the truth is he's pieced up bad defenses this year. Yeah, this says Air Force, App State, New Mexico, Eastern Washington. I get it. These are really bad defenses, but UNLV is closer to these defenses than they are these defenses. Look at Maddox Madsen's numbers against good defenses. South Florida and Notre Dame, he struggled in those 2 games when he saw good defenses. UNLV is closer to the other 4 teams defensively than these 2. So I do not have a ton of faith here in the UNLV defense. I guess you can say they've generated a little bit of pressure without sending extra rushers, which is kind of the recipe to give this Boise State team problems. I suppose you can say that. Maddox Madsen has had a tendency to hold on to the football, but in my opinion, that's thin. I don't think it's responsible to expect UNLV to make stops here. So this should be a shootout here. I mean, we're looking at a super high total for a reason. I think UNLV could score 30 points and still not cover the plus 12.5. So I lean towards UNLV. I think the number's a little high, but I think I would go over. So put up for the video, UNLV and over for this one. Texas Tech, Arizona State, another one where there's serious injury question marks, and we don't know if these movements are based on sharp action or injury updates. So it went as high as 11.5 and as low as 7. And at the time of recording, we're looking at 7. We don't know who's playing quarterback for either team. Texas Tech, Arizona State, another game where injuries is kind of the lead story. We've got injury question marks to both quarterbacks here. We'll start with the Texas Tech offense. So Baron Morton left the Kansas game. He's listed as day-to-day. So the x-rays and MRI came back negative, which is good. Actually, it says here there's optimum. He won't miss any games. So maybe he plays. He's listed as questionable, though, the quarterback for Texas Tech. Now, the backup, his name's Whit Williams. Damn it. I forget his exact name, but if you watch the Utah game, you know who this is. They were calling him Willie the Whip or something. So the backup quarterback can play. So I don't know how big of a factor that is. But Barry Morton's listed as questionable on the road against this Arizona State defense. Now, first point I want to make is you look at this graphic, and you would think this is a huge mismatch, right? Texas Tech's offense, 15th in success rate, 10th in PPA per play. Arizona State's defense, 96th, 86. So Texas Tech should light this defense up, right? Well, we have to consider who these teams have played, because when we're talking about Arizona State's defense, this team's kind of been through the gauntlet. I mean, they see a strong offense every single week. Utah, TCU, Baylor, even Texas State, even their Sun Belt game. Texas State can score. Mississippi State. I mean, they haven't played a bad offense since Northern Arizona in the opener. Meanwhile, we're singing Texas Tech's offense. We're singing the praises of Texas Tech's offense. Look at the defenses they've seen. Now, they saw Utah. That's impressive. Who's the second best defense they've seen? Houston. Okay, decent defense. After that, Kansas. The defense is terrible. Oregon State. This offense has played a lot of bad defenses. And look, we don't know if Baron Morton's going to play in the game, so maybe this is a moot point. But we can't completely forget about previous years. Remember, it's not like Baron Morton is a freshman and we're just learning about this guy. We've been watching Baron Morton play quarterback for 3 years now. And what's his MO? Yeah, he's elite at home in Lubbock. He can throw for 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, light somebody up at home in Lubbock. But he's not nearly as trustworthy on the road. And this dates back multiple years. And what have we seen so far this season? What are his 2 worst games of the year by far? His 2 road games. Utah and Houston. Remember, Texas Tech was struggling to move the ball in Rice-Eccles until Morton got hurt. So Baron Morton is a guy you've probably heard me say this multiple times on the channel if you subscribe for a while. I trust him at home in Lubbock. I don't really trust this guy on the road, and I think Arizona State's defense is a little undervalued. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Texas Tech play their worst offensive game of the year here against an undervalued Arizona State defense. The problem for Arizona State is on the other side of the football. How is the Sun Devils offense going to move the ball here against Texas State's defense, which looks excellent? They've got $1 billion defensive line. Remember, this is a team that really hit the portal hard. Spent a ton of money on that defensive front. It looks like they got every dollar's worth because they look so good on this side of the ball. 6th in success rate, 5th in PPA per play. They generate a ton of pressure. They're 6th in the country in pressure rate, and they do so without even blitzing. So, yeah, this is a nightmare spot. We don't even know who's playing quarterback for Arizona State, by the way. Sam Levitt. Let me see. I got the update right here. listed as day-to-day. There is growing optimism that he will be ready to play. So I'm assuming that explains the line movement. I'm even seeing a couple 6.5s. So there's growing optimism that Sam Leavitt's going to play. But even so, this Texas Tech pass rush is for real. And Arizona State just lost their starting guard, Ben Coleman. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Their starting center, Ben Coleman. He's out for the season. So they're even missing an offensive lineman. It's tough to envision Arizona State dropping back to pass here in this game, even if Sam Leavitt plays. If Arizona State wants to compete in this game, if they want to have any shot of moving the chains, they're going to have to hand the ball off, which is kind of good news because that's what they want to do. That's the offense Arizona State wants to run. They want to hand the ball off. They have a physical run game. It's looked pretty good at times. This Texas Tech defense has elite numbers against the run. I suppose you can point at the two best offenses that they've seen so far this year, Utah, Kansas. Now, just 2.54 yards per carry, so they weren't ripping off chunks or anything like that. 44% success rate per rush, though. They were moving the chains a little bit, so that's the path for Arizona State. Hand the ball off, stay on the field offensively against this monstrous defensive line. I think it's possible. I mean, Arizona State, this is a get-up spot. They're coming off an embarrassing loss. They're at home. We could finally see Texas Tech's offense have a down game. They might have a backup quarterback themselves, and this is a backup quarterback that they have some film on now that he played in the Utah game. I think Arizona State's defense and run game can keep them in it. If Sam Leavitt plays, I think they're live. I think they can pull it off, but I can't even touch this one without knowing, because if Jeff Sims is at quarterback, the flexibility that gives Texas Tech's defense in terms of play calling, they'll kill them. So I can't touch the game without knowing. If Sam Leavitt plays, yeah, I would love to get it. I would love to be on Arizona State +7 if Leavitt plays and is 100%, which is also another thing because Sam Leavitt's a guy who relies on his athleticism. He's dealing with a foot injury. So if he does play, how healthy is this guy? Give me Arizona State +7, but I won't be betting this unless I know for certain Sam Leavitt's playing. Texas A&M Arkansas. So I suppose the big question is, when we're talking about this A&M offense, how big of a loss is Le'Veon Moss? That's their star running back. He's going to miss a significant amount of time. I was talking to Jay Sternberger, he's the guy who comes on the show Wednesday nights, former All-American at Texas A&M. He was saying they expect Le'Veon Moss to come back for the college football playoff. Granted, hopefully they make it. They're certainly on pace to. The good news for Texas A&M, Le'Veon Moss was actually Ruben Owens' backup last year. Ruben Owens got hurt, and then Le'Veon Moss kind of won the job. He started going nuts. But they've got Ruben Owens there. He was supposed to be the starter last year over Le'Veon Moss, and probably would have been if he didn't get hurt. So despite losing Le'Veon Moss, they've got an RB there, and they've actually got a freshman they really like. I don't have his name written down. So they've still got a pair of RBs, and this Texas A&M offense is still loaded. And despite all of that, they're playing Arkansas, who's probably the worst defense in the SEC. 123rd in success rate, 125th in PPA per play. And honestly, it kind of seems to be getting worse. In their last 4 games, they're allowing 40.8 points per game, over 7.6 yards per play, success rate up close to 52%. They're most likely still going to be missing their defensive tackle, David Okey. There's nothing about this Arkansas defense that really gives you hope. And if you're thinking, oh, well, Kyle, Texas A&M has played all their games at home. We haven't seen them go on the road much this year. Okay, that's fair. They have played most of their games at home, but we did see them go on the road once to South Bend, and they hung 41 points on Notre Dame. If they hang over 7 yards per play and 41 points on Notre Dame and South Bend, they can certainly choose their number against this Arkansas defense. I think everyone in the free world can agree Texas A&M is going to score points on Arkansas in this game, even without Le'Veon Moss at running back. The more interesting matchup is on the other side of the ball. Is Texas A&M's defense able to stop Arkansas? Because we know Arkansas's MO, you're going to score on every single drive, but they might be able to score right back. We just saw it last week against Tennessee. And it's true. This Arkansas offense has been very efficient this year. They're 12th in success rate, 11th in PPA per play. The thing is, I don't think people realize how good this Texas A&M defense is. They just got their starting safety, Bryce Anderson, back from injury, and their starting linebacker, Scooby Williams, back from injury last week. And the guy that was starting in place of Scooby Williams is like awesome and might even won the job. So they actually just got healthier and deeper on the defensive side of the ball. And I don't think people realize how good this defense has been. In their last 3 games, they're allowing 12 points per game. And remember, the touchdown they gave up in the Auburn game was a weird pick 6. If it wasn't for that touchdown, they would have given up, 3 points to Auburn? In their last 3 games against SEC opponents, they're allowing 4.21 yards per play, 32.9% success rate, 12 points per game. This defense is playing as well as any defense in the country right now. This might be the best defense in the country, truly. And what does this defense do specifically? They generate pressure without sending blitzers. That's exactly what you got to do to stop Taylon Green. He's a guy that likes to extend the play and hold on to the football. Struggles under pressure, but he's great at reading the blitz packages. Texas A&M doesn't really blitz much. They generate pressure with their front four, which is a tough matchup for Taylon Green. Look, it looks like this team wants to play for Bobby Petrino, and props to Arkansas for putting up a fight out there against Tennessee. They actually took an early lead, and they really gave him a game. But in my opinion, Texas A&M's defense, the way they're playing right now, the fact that they're healthier, they're so much farther above the Tennessee defense, who is missing both their corners out for the year. Tennessee's defense is having problems. It's not like last year's Tennessee defense. Texas A&M's defense is a serious step up. So even though they're back at home, I think Texas A&M's a wagon. I'll lay it here. Aggies.
Real quick, another weather game. There could be a weather situation here in Arkansas, which, in my opinion, favors Texas A&M. They have the better run game. They should win the battle on the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. So, yeah, weather, in my opinion, helps Texas A&M.
Ole Miss Georgia. This one was at 7.5 for a few days. It looks like Ole Miss did get hit at the 7.5 when they raised limits to 20K. We're looking at a flat 7 now. Ole Miss Georgia. So I suppose I should start by saying I don't really care too much about the Washington State game. I know it's concerning seeing Ole Miss struggling at home in Oxford against Washington State. I get it. They were like 1 billion point favorites. Washington State was actually winning the game for a while. I get it. But I mean, let's not pretend like we don't see this all the time in college football. You got Ole Miss playing a home game against Washington State. The game is sandwiched between the LSU game and the Georgia game, 2 of the biggest games of the year, the old quote-unquote sandwich spot. But I'm not saying it isn't concerning. I'm just saying my entire opinion of Ole Miss isn't thrown off from one flat game against an inferior opponent. We see that all the time. Oregon almost lost to Idaho last year. They ended up going 13-0 and winning the Big Ten. So not reading too much into this one game against Washington State. Before that, Ole Miss is coming off a huge win against LSU. And even if you want to talk about the game against Washington State, it's not like Trinidad Chambliss played poorly. In fact, he was pretty good in the game, a 118.9 QB rating. Look, I'm not reading too much into it. So speaking of Trinidad Chambliss, do we think Ole Miss is going to be able to move the ball on this Georgia defense? And honestly, I think the answer is yes. Georgia's defensive front has been tough against the run, but this secondary looks pretty vulnerable to the pass. I know you could say, no, Kyle, they're shoring things up. And that's true. In the last 2 games, the numbers against the pass look very good. They played Kentucky, who's got Cutter Boley playing quarterback. He's a freshman. And then they played Auburn, a team who doesn't really pose much of a threat in terms of throwing the ball. They're a run-first team all the way, and they actually were running the ball in Georgia in the first half. If you remember the 2 games before those against Alabama and Tennessee, when Georgia actually saw an offense that can throw the ball, they were getting pieced up. I mean, 52.5% success rate per dropback, over 325 passing yards per game, 8.75 yards per pass attempt. So this Georgia secondary looked really vulnerable when they actually saw quarterbacks that can throw it. And Trinidad Chambliss has shown us he can definitely throw it. In addition to that, he's also handled pressure really well. He's handled blitzes really well. Georgia's pass rush definitely a down year, at least so far, in terms of generating pressure. So I think based on what we've seen so far, you'd have to think that Trinidad Chambliss is able to make some throws and move the ball on this Georgia defense. The problem for Ole Miss in this matchup is on the other side of the ball, because this defensive front is just a shell of what it was last year. If you remember, Ole Miss had one of the best defensive lines in the country. They were elite against the run last year. Almost all those players are gone, and stopping the run is a problem. Everybody's running the ball on Ole Miss. Ole Miss is 109th in success rate per rush, 124th in PPA per rush. Now, I do want to give them some credit. They did a good job against LSU's rushing attack, but, I mean, look at these games. Kentucky, Arkansas, Tulane, Washington State. Even Washington State was running the ball on Ole Miss. Although, to be fair, they had a 44-yard run that padded their rushing stats a little bit. But against Kentucky, Arkansas, Tulane, Washington State, 50% success rate per rush. They're allowing over 174 rushing yards per game, 4.95 yards per carry. Now, this Georgia rushing attack, it may not be what we saw years ago from Kirby Smart with no Sean Marino and DeAndre Swift and all those years. It's certainly not that rushing attack anymore. In fact, they were really struggling to run the ball on the road against Auburn, but Auburn's been elite against the run. That game was on the road. Ole Miss has definitely not been elite against the run. Also, they lost their RB1 in that game. Chauncey Bowens, he left the Auburn game injured. I think he only had 4 or 5 carries in the game. In addition to that, he should be good. He should be good to go for this one, by the way. Chauncey Bowens, their main running back. In addition to that, they just got their left tackle, Freeling, back. And they might even be getting their right tackle back, Ernest Green. So they should be healthier in this game. They might be way healthier in this game. And like I said, I mean, in terms of running the football, you can't even compare going on the road on Saturday night and trying to run the ball on this Auburn defense to running the ball against Ole Miss defense at home. It's not even comparable. So Georgia's going to be able to run the ball. And in terms of throwing it, I mean, Ole Miss pass rush, certainly nothing like it was last year. Gunnar Stockton's been excellent. Georgia's passing attack has been probably the most reliable part of their team so far this year. So, yeah, I expect Georgia to move the ball pretty freely. You add on the fact that it's a revenge game. Remember, Ole Miss kind of beat up on them last year in the rain. Jackson Dart, I remember I was on Ole Miss in that game. So it's a revenge spot for Kirby Smart. I think he might lay it on them. I think Georgia's going to score a lot of points in this game. Then you got Ole Miss possibly playing from behind. They run a fast pace. They're 10th in college football in terms of seconds between snaps. I'm on the over here. I got 52.5. I'd honestly play it up to 56, 57. I think Georgia's going to score 35 plus points in this game. So, yeah, I'm on the over. Maryland, UCLA, we went from 3 to 3.5. Now we're back to 3. 20K limits, we're sitting at a flat 3. Maryland, UCLA, man, how did the Terps not win either of these games? How are these 2 losses? Well, the Maryland game is probably the Washington game, I should say, is probably more the embarrassing one. They were up 20-0. They were coming off a bye. Washington was flying across the country. It was just the most perfect spot for them to pick up a Big Ten win. They have a 20-0 lead. Somehow, I believe they gave up 21 unanswered in the fourth quarter to lose it. Well, obviously it was 24 unanswered because they were up 20-0. But pretty sure Washington scored 3 consecutive touchdowns on 3 straight drives in the fourth quarter to win. Tough loss. I appreciate them covering for me, though. And then they followed that up with a game against Maryland. Now, this one is not like Washington. This isn't one that they, quote-unquote, should have won. Nebraska kind of dominated this game, so Maryland was actually kind of lucky to be in it. But, again, I appreciate them for covering. I've taken the Terps in back-to-back weeks, and they've covered for me in back-to-back weeks. So will I be taking the Terps a third time? And the answer is most definitely not. Those were favorable spots at home. Now they're flying 3,000 miles across the country to play a team who's on the complete opposite trajectory. I mean, UCLA looks pretty damn good. Obviously, the big win over Penn State, the big historical upset. They follow that up with going on the road to East Lansing and beating the life out of Michigan State. They beat up on Michigan State 38-13. I'm really not sure if Maryland's able to slow the run game down. Remember, even before UCLA started playing better as a whole, they've been consistently running it. I mean, look at their last 5 games. This dates back to before they started winning games. Over 186 rushing yards per game, 5.29 yards per carry, 51% success rate per rush. So this UCLA rushing attack has been the only aspect of their team that's been somewhat reliable. Looks really good recently now that the whole team started playing better. And Maryland's got elite numbers against the run on the season. They got steamrolled at home by Nebraska last week. And if you take a look at their first 5 games, FAU passes the ball. Northern Illinois, one of the worst offenses in the country. Towson's an FCS program. Wisconsin, terrible offense. And then Washington, passing offense, that was just such a favorable spot as well. In addition to being passing offense, they were flying across the country. Maryland was coming off a bye. So they really didn't see a viable rushing threat until that Week 7 game against Nebraska. So, yeah, I think UCLA is going to run the ball. Maryland just fine. Now that they're, for the first time in a few weeks, Maryland's in an unfavorable spot. We don't have a huge sample size of Maryland flying out to the West Coast. They did once last year. They went to Oregon, and they were actually somewhat competitive. The final score was 39-18. You certainly can't compare a trip to Eugene to a trip to the Rose Bowl, not at all. But we know over the last 2 years, we've seen the cross-country traveling Big Ten team struggle, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So I think UCLA is going to run the ball. And honestly, I know UCLA's defense has been terrible this year. I think Maryland might struggle to move the football also. Maryland's 114th in success rate, 100th in PPA per play. Again, I know the UCLA year-long defensive numbers look terrible, but look at Maryland's offensive game logs. I mean, has Maryland played an efficient offensive game once this whole year? Maybe the game against Towson at home? I mean, this Maryland offense, they've been skating by. They can't run the ball. They're entirely reliant on Malik Washington doing circus shit. I don't trust Maryland to move the ball here, even against UCLA's defense. And by the way, this is a UCLA defense that is showing improvement. Ever since they made the coaching change, we're kind of seeing a new energy with this team. In their last 3 games, I mean, it's still not good, but it's way better than what we were seeing in the first 3 games. So, yeah, I expect UCLA to score. I expect Maryland to be playing from behind, throwing the ball a lot. So I also expect points. I'm on UCLA. I got a bad number in this one. I'm on UCLA minus 3.5. If you timed the market, you could have got a 2.5. I bet it. It went down to 2.5, and it was there for a few hours and then came back up. So if you timed it up right, you might have got like a minus 2.5 or a flat 3. Unfortunately, I didn't play it right. But I'm also on the over. I think I got a good number on the over. I think I'm on 51. What's it at now? 1 second. 52.5. So I think I'm on 51 or 51.5. I don't have it in front of me, but I'm on UCLA minus 3.5 over 51.5 in this one. Utah BYU. This is an awesome one. This is a rivalry game. These teams do not like each other. If you're new getting into college football, I promise you, this will be a cool one to watch. So Utah is traveling out to Provo. I do have a bet on this game too. So you look at the year-long numbers here. Utah's offense against BYU's defense. What a battle. I mean, Utah's offense has been great. BYU's defense has been great. And after the Texas Tech game, everyone, including myself, kind of had questions about Utah's offense because Texas Tech completely shut them down. And we were kind of like, okay, so maybe Utah was just beating up on some bad teams and Texas Tech kind of exposed that offense, right? Because Texas Tech was kind of their first legitimate test because UCLA looked so bad. So Texas Tech was kind of their first legitimate test and they looked terrible. So we were like, this Utah offense, it's not very good. The first time they were tested, they looked bad. Well, they responded to that because in their last 2 games, they played 2 respectable defenses. West Virginia's defense isn't all that bad. Arizona's defense is pretty good. They lit these teams up. 45 points per game, 7.28 yards per play, 50.3% success rate. So Utah's offense kind of silenced all of that rhetoric, we'll say, after the Texas Tech game with 2 strong offensive performances. And the thing with the BYU defense, man, look at their game logs here. This is BYU's defensive game logs. What's the most impressive data point on here? Like who's the toughest offense they've seen so far? I mean, Arizona, Colorado, 2 road games. Okay, those are respectable. Both those teams were able to run the ball on BYU. Neither team has like a dangerous rushing attack or anything. In fact, Colorado ran the ball really well on BYU, especially early in the game. BYU kind of took control later in the game. But you look at their numbers from those 2 games, they allowed 24 points per game, 45.6% success rate, 5.21 yards per play. Again, not that these numbers are bad, but they certainly don't look elite. And, I mean, Utah's offense is way better than Arizona's or Colorado's. Now, there is some good news for BYU's defense on the injury front. So, starting linebacker Jack Kelly is expected to return. He's missed the last 2. So, it looks like they're getting a linebacker back. They should be getting a defensive tackle back as well. Purcell, he missed 1 game. He's set to return as well. So, it looks like 2 starters coming back for BYU's defense, but they just lost the safety. Raider Dumani, he just got injured, and he's not expected to play. So they get 2 starters back, and they get a linebacker and a D tackle back. They lose a safety. Overall, BYU's defense is slightly healthier, and we do want to mention that as a whole on this side of the ball, I think BYU's defense at home is strong enough to make Utah work for it. This is a tough place to play, and remember, we saw Utah struggling to move the ball a little bit early in the Wyoming game out in Laramie. West Virginia really wasn't able to give them problems, but we have seen this Utah offense struggle a little bit here and there. It's not invincible. They're very reliant on the run, and BYU's defensive front is strong, so I think they're able to make Utah work for it. It's the other side of the ball. This is where I think Utah can play really well, and I know you look at the matchup, and you're thinking, wait, they look slightly weaker against the run. And that's true. BYU wants to run the ball. They've been running the ball really well. In their last 3 games, they're averaging 5.1 yards per carry, 53.7% success rate per rush, 214 rushing yards per game. That's against respectable teams, too. Colorado, West Virginia, Arizona. So I respect BYU's run game. They have a good RB there. They can run the ball. Utah's run defense has looked a little bit shaky. West Virginia and Arizona State, Jeff Sims was moving the chains on them a little bit. And you can see these numbers against the run, not particularly elite. Probably should mention they had a huge lead in that game, in those games where we're probably caught sitting back in coverage a little bit. Remember that Arizona State game was raining and Arizona State was down like 21 points still running the ball. So I take these numbers a little bit with a grain of salt. But I do think BYU is able to run the ball a little bit in the game. Oh, and I forgot to mention Utah lost a safety in the West Virginia game, Nate Ritchie, and he's not going to be back for this one. It's one of the team's leading tacklers. So Utah is missing a starter. But the part I just can't get on board with for BYU's offense is right here. I mean, Bear Bachmeier, he's looked good. He's looked poised. He looks comfortable. It does not look like a freshman at all. This Utah pass rush is coming, and I just can't trust BYU to finish drives or sustain long drives up and down the field. I don't trust them to drop back and pass against this Utah defense. So I do think BYU's drives will get halted. I'm on the under at 49.5. I also think, I bet you the game's close in the first half. I do think Utah will pull away a little bit late. So I would take Utah to cover the 3, but the bet I place is the under 49.5. Thanks for watching. A couple games I didn't have time to get to. I'm on the over in Tennessee, Alabama. I'm surprised that number hasn't come up, though. You could still get 58.5. So I'm on the over in that one. So we really haven't seen any movement on the total in that one. USC Notre Dame, man, I went back and forth. Originally, I was like, USC coming off the big game against Michigan. Now they fly to South Bend. They might get smoked. But the more I looked into it, I actually think I lean USC at the flat 10, but I don't have a bet in that one. Florida State, Stanford, I kind of want to bet Stanford. I told Duck on the live show I was going to bet Stanford. I actually didn't bet it yet, but yeah, it would only be Stanford. Florida State, man, flying across the country to Palo Alto. What do they have to get motivated for? Yeah, thanks for watching. See you all on the live show, 10 a.m. Eastern time. If you're able to make it, we'd love to see you in the comments.